Hey, Steve, how are you?
Yeah,
Gorgeous day out.
yeah.
But I couldn't remember.
My brain keeps telling me I'm cold, even though I'm in warm places.
Right? And you're still just
All I have to do is look outside and
and you start shivering.
Projects.
goggles, I should have worn those. I kept getting, I was walking right into the snow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I don't think we're gonna get out of here at 5 o'clock.
Who might?
Yeah. Oh, maybe.
Oh, no problem. She freaks me out. We were gonna get on her. We're walking back. We had a plan to stop in and get cookies and something on her. And she just did a line of them, but that's a cute shop. Let's go in there. And my jaw just drops to the ground. And I go, okay. And that was when she goes, well, that's a cute shop. And I'm like, I told you about cute shops so many times.
Yeah, that's
Well,
awesome.
that's good. So, yeah.
Nice to meet you. That's great.
She was awesome. She was pretty excited too, and she's planning on coming back. She's gonna get all her stuff for her cousin in Oklahoma.
That's Stuart. Sounds great.
I don't know who took them.
Yeah, good pictures. Who took all these pictures?
Yeah, half of them are staff and half of them are advisory.
Yeah, they're great.
Yes.
The interior, Mark's pictures.
Thanks for taking the time to do that, guys.
Yeah.
How do you?
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, sweetie. Say hi.
Yeah, we're right at 4.
Yeah.
You've got one person on mine. All right. I'll go over the meeting of the February 27th Historic Preservation Commission meeting at 4:02 p.m. Roll call, please.
Alternate Flanagan.
Here.
Commissioner Whittington,
Here,
Commissioner Spillman,
Here.
Commissioner Lindquist,
Here.
Commissioner Edwards,
Here.
alternate Bailey. She will be here, just she will be late.
We change your changes or revisions to the agenda.
No, there are nothing.
All right, may I get a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I move that we approve the agenda for this February 27th meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I.
All right, the approval of the agenda is approved. Any revisions or changes to the minutes for the January 23rd meeting?
Really, no, I was counting on you to find my mistake. It was a long one. I just really was. We've discussed some of these things so much that I really wanted to capture it. So I'm sorry that the minutes are so long, but it was important.
You did a nice job on this. May I get a motion to approve the minutes for the January 23rd meeting?
I move that we approve the January 23rd minutes.
I will second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. All right, public comment items not on the agenda. Any public comments on anything that's not on tonight's current agenda?
Steve, that would be you if you would like.
Okay, yeah, The demolition of 109 Oak Street,
That's
Are you
actually
here for
on
that?
tonight's agenda.
yeah,
You want
So
to comment?
that's-
Okay.
We're waiting comment during the public hearing, if that's okay.
sounds great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Very good. All right, I don't see anybody online. Any other comments on anything that might not be on tonight's agenda? Don't see anything there. We will move on then to housekeeping items. Lori?
I do just have a couple,
Take your time.
of mine. I don't know if you guys remember Natalie Lord, but she's an architect for Formworks. I don't know if it's her Morgan, I'm sorry, Formworks. She, you know, we've been trying to get in contact with the owners of the Beehive. And Natalie, reached out to Nancy Bailey at Main Street asking for that information, and she forwarded it to me. And so between the three of us, we Googled and we went online, and all I could hear was Marcia and pickleball. And so we went and found on LinkedIn, there's Nancy now, we found an email address. And so Natalie asked if she could reach out, and of course we were like, yes, please. We sent a letter with no response, and Natalie did get in touch with them, and so we have communication with them, but they're working. They want to get back up here and do something to the building. They're sorry they left it so long, but at least there's communication now, and
There was an actual response.
yes, there was a response, and she offered her services and any guidance that she might be able to do, so hopefully they'll reach out to some of us when they are ready. I think he mentioned something about selling something before he could. Anyway, the point is we made contact and got a response from them, so thank you, Nancy and Natalie, and it was quite an effort, but
Little technical.
it is good.
No, that's great. Is there contact on record? Has that changed?
You know, yeah, many months ago, this might even be almost a year ago, Mark and I had a pretty unpleasant meeting with the contractor, who indicated they were representing the property owner. But we have not had any we basically put the ball in their court for what we needed for a pre-application meeting. And we have had no further communication and contact with that contractor.
But Natalie from Formworks has been in touch with the current owner. No further contact with the contractor on record at this point.
Correct.
Okay, that's good news
It is.
on both.
And then yell at me if I speak too much Nancy on this one, but I did want to let the HPC know that Larry Lucas has reached out to the new owners of 500 Harrison, which if you recall is the Chinese restaurant. And they responded to Larry Lucas as well and might be setting up a meeting to work with him. So that is another really, really good news. We really want to keep our eyes open for any kind of grants that can help them through that process. But getting Larry Lucas involved with that is just amazing. So I feel good news for both of those buildings that we've been concerned about. At least we're in contact and things are actually progressing.
No, that's great. While we're there, Nancy, congratulations on your new space. Do you have any updates on 500 Harrison? Lovely.
Yes,
Just getting involved.
I have spoken to the property owner's wife. I'm in contact with her. Her name is Mary Saul. They did allude to the fact that they were kind of not quite aware of, quite to the extent that the building repairs needed. So she was grateful for the resources. She was grateful for the outreach. She hadn't been contacted by anybody else in town. So, and who would know? Because I had to get her number from a friend of mine, the original owner, because I wasn't getting the response that I felt like we needed from Roger Sanchez.
Fantastic.
I'm not in a negative way, just he's busy running a lot. He was in Mexico at the time in his defense. So we
And
had
this is
some
his wife
issues.
that you're in contact
Marisol, and she's here in Salida. And she speaks a lot better English, so that barrier, it's just a little, just more effective corresponding with her, and she's very interested in working with you guys, us, the city, Larry, and doing all the things as a good
she
partner. And she
stated that she wasn't aware of the condition of the building.
just, she stated some financial difficulties around the planning documents, even in light of a $50,000 grant, like 616 and 618 Harrison. She doesn't even have the 150 needed to kind of complete and close the gap at this time, but maybe we can help prep her in the future for that, so that we can have a path, at least a strategic path forward, and not just like a deadpan stop.
Oh,
Right.
Absolutely, and like we had with the previous owners, okay, good. Okay, very good.
One more housekeeping item, I need to check with Scott and Steve. We got an email from El Tomar, and they were needing, the financials from 2023, and they were also unable to open the zip file for the 2022. So I did get the 2023 unaudited financials from Crystal yesterday afternoon or this morning. So I have that ready, but I don't know what they're referring to. Is it the 2022 financials that they're unable to unzip, or do you guys know how we sent that?
I think it's the 2022 financials. Let me look to make sure. One of the files was too large to be added to their online upload thing, and so I compressed it to get it under the file size limit. And so I think that's what they're referring to, that they weren't then able to open that compressed version of it. But hopefully if we sent them just the original of that, and I believe it was the 2022 audit City of Leadville PDF that you would sent me that then was too large to go in there.
Okay, so if I send them the 2022 audited financials and the unaudited 2023 financials, you think that would meet
Yes.
what they're asking? Okay, that's what I'll do then. And I just wanted to update the commission that they have received it. Obviously, we have until May 21st, is that correct? When I
No,
see
they
they're
said
gonna have their meeting.
they wanted the financials by early March.
That's true, March 11th. My deadline to get these to them, which I can do that tomorrow morning, those financials, because I have them in their original format. So I will send those to tomorrow, and that will meet that March 11th deadline.
If you have trouble compressing the PDF, send it to me. I think I might be able to do it.
Okay,
Steve, did you have some?
Brief, previous, thing on the Chinese restaurant, I was trying to rent the building and I talked to the building owner's father. Complicated arrangement as far as father and mother have working for multiple real estate agencies, as I figured out.
And the building has since sold.
But the building was sold, but I pointed out some of the structural defects, especially on the southeast facing corner. There's a rip that goes all the way down the building in the front. He said they had an engineer's report that he didn't want to talk about.
Thank you. Yes, and we are familiar with that engineer's report.
Okay.
Thank you.
I forgot one thing, I'm sorry, while we're on housekeeping. I have a copy of, last week's paper, if anyone didn't see it, there's 3 pages for Marcia, and it was just amazing, so if anybody didn't get that and see that, I have a copy, you can get.
Well, very good.
Sorry about that.
And under housekeeping continuing, State Historic Fund grant kickoff for the Manhattan.
Did I put that on?
You did? Do you have any information on that?
It's for the Hatton block,
It is,
so not for the Hatton, it's not to be confused with the Manhattan bar.
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
We did have our kickoff meeting. Everything seems to be going great. They're right on track. They're even talking about the next steps, which would be getting a bigger grant to actually get some of the work done. So, we're just going right along. We've already met our first 2 deliverables or something like that. So their loan is definitely, or their grant is definitely set up differently than ours. Because it's a mini grant and it's for construction documents, so they don't have the deliverables we have on our grant. So, but going right along as planned, so.
So you'll be able to email, the grant financial information tomorrow morning.
Yes,
If you can't, we'll send it on to Steve.
correct.
Very good. Thank you, Steve, for that. Anything else at all under housekeeping items today? Very good. Moving on to updates on the agenda. Stuart, to the people, what kind of information did you come up with?
To be honest, I spoke with Ryan Jordan at VistaWorks.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that have the existing tour already up on a site called Pocket Sites.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy to pull up and look, and it's got some nice features to it. He was not aware that they even had it. So the there's certain versions you can put on that site that are free, and his speculation was they did it so long ago, they forgot it.
Okay.
So I talked to him a little bit about what it might look like if we were over or partner with him somehow, and I couldn't really get past him just talking about the fact that they could help us develop a new tour. They currently work with one of the, sites that I already talked to called Travel Story.
Mhm.
That's sort of their main vendor they partner with now. And I've looked at some of the work that they did jointly with Travel Story down in the Spanish Peaks area for a couple, 3 different towns. Really nice, really professional, done quite well.
The work done was good work.
Yes, and I actually followed back up with the Travel Story app folks, and they said they love working with VistaWorks. One of my questions to him was, what do you provide that VistaWorks doesn't? And most of that, and the difference between, I talked to 4 different apps, including a Zoom call with someone named Fabrizio in Italy last week. And the difference in most of these app platforms are the amount of work that we want to do ourselves.
Mhm.
So some of them, we would have to develop all the text, all the audio, all the everything, and we were given basically a platform to input all that data. We control the data, we can update it whenever we want, but everything's on us.
Right.
Other apps like Travel Story, it's a shared production feature, and if we think we need help taking text and making it more usable to audio, they'll help us with that. And so it's sort of a mixed blend. Some cost a little more upfront and less to manage every month. Some are free upfront. You just go to their tool builder or their tour builder and input the data, set up your account, and then it's a monthly cost moving forward. So,
And to update the commission based on our communication last meeting, VistaWorks, the one that's done in Univista, is free upfront with a higher monthly cost.
well,
Am I getting that backwards?
yeah, the VistaWorks is the sort of marketing company out of BB.
Sorry, and they are using Travel.
Travel
Stories. Sorry, thank you.
Travel Story's got some upfront. So it was $8,000 or $9,000 upfront. To help build it and, get it up.
But they are helping to build it.
Yes,
So
But they're-
right, it's consistent, right? And their monthly cost was relatively low
yes. Well, 750 to 1,000 a year.
per year, right, $200 per month. There was another company that had no upfront cost, but had a higher monthly cost. Which company was that?
Pocket Sites
Correct, okay.
is free upfront, and depends on which version you want, because some of these, if you upgrade, then you can get a lot of analytics back from them. How many visitors did we have? Where are they from? That sort of stuff. Their bottom line plan is a couple $100 a month. And it can go up to several $1,000s a month, depending on what you want.
Gotcha.
And then this guided dog that I actually was able to talk to last week, they're free up for their low end version, about $75. But again, everything in that case is on us. We do the audio, we upload it, we have to develop all the content.
And do you hold with your previous assertion that the first one that you looked at, that you liked the best, continues to be the best option? It was a higher upfront cost, but a lower monthly cost, and still seemingly the best option for Lakeville?
I think Travel Story is a great option, probably the best. A lot depends on whether we have somebody that's able to do some of the research and really come up with the text. We're gonna have to do for all of these unless we want to pay a lot more to have something like VistaWorks help us do that.
Right.
So I think we still have to go through this a little bit and really walk through ourselves what we think we want to do and what we're capable of doing, and then make a decision. I'm comfortable, I've talked to enough applications that one of these 4 will work.
One of the 4,
Like,
okay.
and actually, in my own personal opinion, I really Digit Widget. They're just very trip planning oriented, very tourism oriented, very reservations.
They were more like a tourism panel
Yeah.
than a historic walking tour. Does anybody on the commission have any questions about what we're discussing in the app process currently?
One thing is, ask about voice talent, because unless one of us wants to do the audio portion, it's worthwhile to get somebody who is a professional at that.
Mhm.
It really can make a difference in the end product.
That might be a worthwhile reach out to the Tabor Opera House in Lyric. And see if we can find some voice talent locally that would be willing to work with us, keep it local.
Yeah, one of the tours I looked at, it was clear that the local community had put the audio together. It was like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm the director of this museum, and, you know, it was like me doing it,
Mhm.
so not that great.
Your impression was that it was not truly
It was
professional,
fine, but there's some tours that are really polished and
Yeah.
quite professional.
and it does make a difference when you're looking at it. Okay.
I mean, we could start out with a downgraded version and upgrade as we go along, or we could wait a little bit and try to get the money and, you know, maybe, I don't wanna say do it right, but do it right.
It'd be nice to be alone and do it one time. And it seems like that would save us a little bit of money to do it right the first time. If we could figure that part out. What do you consider to be next steps? What should we look at for our next work session?
I've already started compiling all the information I got from talking to these folks and follow-up emails. And I'll re-put this package together and update it, and then I think we can just walk through it and sort of look at some of the higher level pictures about what do we want to provide, what do we think we want other people to provide,
Mhm.
get some rough ideas on costs, and then just decide if we want to launch forward with a free version, given what information we might already generally have. Do we want to partner with VistaWorks somehow and try to take over the tour they have, but give them a link on our page?
Did you get an idea of what VistaWorks would ask for compensation wise?
They had, the tours they did down by the Spanish Beach, they did for 3 different communities. And the total cost for that, and it was through their tourism board.
For all 3 communities or per community?
For all 3. And that included VistaWorks effort and the travel story costs, so that was total combined, so if you back that off, maybe it's 20,000. If we wanted to bring them in to do some of the research and do the voiceover and whatnot.
20,000, and what's the annual cost thereafter?
It would most, I'm assuming it would be the travel story costs, which are, in that case, $750 to $1,000 a year.
So less than $200 per year, say 150 to 100.
Something to ask about that is, does that include changes to what you've already produced? Because my experience with VistaWorks is that they had a very limited number of changes you could make in your website or whatever. And after that, they'd start charging extra.
I'm positive there would be charges. I know just even with the travel story app. I just talked to them about costs for potentially doing 10 locations. And because they control, this particular app controls the system, so if there's updates to it, they do them, we don't. And so if we wanted to add a new site, it would be $800 per building for them, for us to send them the information, and for them to upload it and make it active.
So $800, not including what it would cost from VistaWorks for them to produce that segment to upload. Before our work session next 2 weeks, and hopefully Nancy, you can be available in that meeting. Let's see if we can figure out what the cost would be if we did a 10-site tour using VistaWorks, what VistaWorks cost would be. And that way we could come up with a budget that we could then present to the HPC. That sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
And would you like that meeting to be on March 12th at 3 o'clock before our regular HPC instead of say the 26th? 2 weeks is when you would like to have that.
2 weeks, which would be 4 weeks for our last work session.
True.
Yes,
Yeah.
so yeah, 2 weeks. Is
Okay.
that okay, Stuart?
I assume so. I'll have to look at my calendar.
Sure.
I
March
should
12th.
let you know that VistaWorks and this Brian Jordan are the ones that have that.
Mhm. We should also discuss that potential. Very good. Any other questions from the commission on the walking tour updates? Anyone would like to see anything different than what we're pursuing currently? I understand your reservations with VistaWorks, and I'll pursue that as well. Anything, Scott? So, oh, there it is. There it is. Very good. Thank you, Stuart.
I do just one last comment, I think it is possible that we could work directly with Travel Story and bring in someone like an Natalie Warren to do some additional research on some of the buildings.
Mhm.
I think Travel Story for a cost would help us take text that we provide them and make it more audio suitable. They would also help us do the audio for a cost.
Mhm.
So we do, I think, have a way.
And I think let's pursue that. Let's pursue whether we use VistaWorks to assist us and whether we did it on our own or with other consultants.
So I think we have both those options, but I will tell you, GravelWorks thinks VistaWorks does extremely good.
Thank you. Okay. Very good. All right, updates, commissioner updates, your update, please.
Yes, I just want to let the commission know, in as far as I discussed that we're not in any hurry, I guess is what I was trying to say. I felt disrespectful to immediately replace Marcia. But obviously we need to think about that. So we decided to put an ad in the paper. We have to do things properly. We can't elect a new chair until we have our full commission appointed. I mean, obviously you guys have already been appointed, but the mayor and council need to appoint our 5th member of the commission. And to do that, we need to send out a request we need to post a vacancy. So I sent out an ad yesterday for this week's paper and next week's paper. I did include a deadline because that's apparently something we have to start doing in the city. So I put a March 15th deadline on that. I know I've already received an application and letter of intent from Steve Whittington, passed one along to me.
Good.
And I didn't include that in the packet because until we get all the resumes or anybody who wants to apply, I get those applications in and then I'll put them in the packet. And then Chapin and I have been discussing recommendations to the mayor because I'm not sure that we're doing it properly. Let Chapin.
One question I have for the HPC is, would the HPC like to make a recommendation on your next member to city council? It's not required by code. For planning and zoning commission, we have not been doing that, since I've been working with the P and Z. And that's been okay, but there could be some different factors there. So I think Ward and I would be supportive of whether HPC wanted to make a recommendation or not, but ultimately, just to be clear, it is a council appointment. It's a mayoral appointment with consent of council. So if that is something that the commission would like to do, then we will absolutely schedule that after these advertisements run, and we'll schedule that for an agenda item at a future meeting, an upcoming meeting. The one note on that is that your votes will be public record.
Our votes would be public record and only a recommendation. They could be overridden by the mayor.
Yeah.
2 things there. First and foremost, I would like to see letters of intent from our alternates for a permanent position, just as if you were doing it from the newspaper ad. I'd also like to see letters of intent from our advisors to come onto the board. I would really like to see us promote from within for people that have been very active, and then have people come in and fill those lower spots. And I think it makes perfect sense, me personally, that we make a recommendation to the mayor for appointment.
And that's how we've done it in the past. I just didn't know what necessarily something we were required to do. But if we get 2 or 3 applicants, I think it's fair to discuss those applicants, have them come in and talk to us, and then make a recommendation.
And we have a history of doing that. I think that makes perfect sense. Any comments from the commission on those points? Would dearly love to see some letters of intent from alternates and also from advisors to move up a little bit. That would be nice.
Scott, did you have any thoughts on that?
Okay.
No, I just wanted to agree with Joey that it would be great to see letters if any advisory or alternates want to, and I agree on making a recommendation. Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Nancy, did you have a comment to make?
Deadline for the,
March 15th
okay,
is the deadline posted for the newspaper.
okay, thank you, sorry, yep.
And then after we get those and we seat our active commission, and the mayor has appointed that fifth commissioner, at that point, we can internally elect a chairperson.
Do we have any dissent on that decision? To wait until we have a full commission before we elect a new chair? Any,
Doesn't sound like we have a choice.
No dissent from me.
and Steve, if you disagree with that, please speak up. I don't necessarily know how this is supposed to work, so.
No, so, well, from what they said, we don't, it's the way we have to do it.
All right, then we'll move forward, hopefully with new letters of intent from alternates and advisors both. And then we can review our, letters of intent from there and fill in our little spots.
The ad will run this week and next week, March 7th.
Mark?
To honor Marcia, I'd like to propose maybe we name the chair, Martin Nick Memorial Chair or something. It's an idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Would you put that on the agenda to make a motion for next meeting? Make an honorary chair. That's a great idea. Thank you. All right, we will move on to new business. I will recuse myself upstairs as we discuss 109 Oak Street. Someone will come get me when you're done or send me a text message, please.
Yeah, just enjoying it.
I'll just say, my office is open and there's a lot of Pepsi.
Very good. So,
Either way, we're on.
I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Yeah.
While everybody's getting settled for this, so, this is a continuance, of the next item on the agenda for 109 Oak Street. So this, public hearing was continued from the February 13th meeting. So public notice, was provided in advance of that meeting because the, motion was made for continuance to a date certain. There's not additional public notice required, so, the meeting of tonight was essentially noticed at the February 13th meeting. And there is not a need to reopen the public hearing, although I would encourage the commission to reopen the public comment portion and then close the public comment portion. But the goal for tonight is a recommendation to city council. And I'll turn it over to I guess our acting chair.
And he doesn't have a script because I don't think that we need the script because the public hearing was already open.
So it is.
Okay, are you looking at me?
So
All right.
just this time we will resume, but
Okay, so, we went through a lot of the formalities 2 weeks ago about this, and, I had a script to read from, a partial script at least, and I don't even have that tonight. So, I guess we'll reopen the public comment part of the meeting. And so if anyone has a public comment about this particular project, you need to sign in. And then, once you're signed in, stand before the commission and identify yourself and your address. We've had one person sign in. Is anybody else here to comment in the public comment section? Section.
Do I sign in?
You guys are applicants, so you're part of this.
Oh.
So you don't need to do public comment. You guys are-
Okay, so give us your name, your address, and your comment.
Okay, so it's at the eight there. I have 3 minutes. Is that what it is?
We can be a little flexible about
Okay,
that.
great. My name is Steve Prestash. I live at 131 East Third Street. I've resided in Leadville 43 years, resided there since 1995, I believe, so that's 28 years. I knew the previous owner, Bob Duarte. I'm kind of sad to see the building go, but it is in such a decrepit state that you're gonna have somebody wander in there and then injure themselves moving around in the structure, I believe. The way things work, somebody will think there's no wonder in there, some one way or another. I was hoping for two things. Bob, when he constructed that, so you know, when he constructed that fence that's along the property, those were made of, those are oak pieces, as I understand it, and they were from water, flumes that came from Climax, so they were water, pipes that were made with pieces of wood. And, he, had all these scraps laying around, and I collected the scraps and put them on two piles. Nobody wanted those, I was hoping I could get those if they're still there. They were like 3-foot pieces. So they were like 9-foot sections that
He
each.
ripped them all and have cut them to make the fence around the whole thing. They're all gone.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So they're small pieces.
yeah. They were 16-foot lengths. They're beautiful.
No, there was 3-foot sections that I made into two piles.
Oh.
Two,
You're welcome to come up and look, Steve.
all right, well,
I can't remember. And right now, there's this much snow.
yeah, they were about that square, you know, so they were kind of neat looking. Anyway, if they're gonna demolish the building, I was hoping maybe I could get some of the lumber off of it, if not, fine.
Off the building?
Yeah, I can see how that would be an insurance problem, and you probably just want to rip the whole thing down.
Oh, I mean, I think I'm gonna go along with what the, historic committee said. I think they're gonna save that building, and I love it. But you're right, it's hazard, but we put a fence all the way around it, lock that front door, so nobody can get in them.
Oh,
Unless
okay.
only the historic committee gets in that building. But
Okay, so you're gonna try and save that building?
I would love, I
That's
mean,
what
I
we're
would
here
love to,
for,
I
Steve.
don't know.
Oh, I'm 100% for that,
Yeah, I don't know.
because it is an incredible structure.
Yeah.
Bob told me at one time, it was a bar and, you know, they had the girls there and stuff, all that kind of stuff. And it might have been a
I
store.
like that. I like that.
Yeah, it might have been some kind of store at one time.
Well, Chapin had it described all that.
It's in the staff report, there's.
Okay.
it's in-
Chapin never got to the bar or the ladies of the night.
Good job.
Okay,
I'm looking for you can save that building. You have my support on that 100%, and, hopefully you won't tear it down. It'll be great.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't see how you could save it. It's had all that water going into it
Yeah,
the whole time I've been here.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for your time. Thank you.
oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Not seeing anybody who wants to comment, I will close the public comment part of the meeting. And I forget what the next part we do.
So I just provide a staff update to the staff report, and updates since the last meeting. So the continuance, well, you know, the stated purpose for the continuance of the public hearing was for additional information for site visits. So 3 site visits have happened from 3 separate commissioners at the, and that was arranged with the property owner, and some photos from those site visits are included in your packet. Also, in the staff report on page 20, the comments from the advisory members from their site visits are fully included. So that's the main update to your staff report. The title of that is highlighted, so that you can find it easily. So on page 20 of your packet. All the other information in the staff report remains the same as was included in the packet for the last meeting. Today, you know, the purpose or the task of the commission today is to make a recommendation to city council today. The recommendation should be based on code compliance or code non-compliance. And there are findings that are included in your packet for whatever your recommendation should be. There are also, last thing to say is there are guiding questions on page 21 that staff summarized last time. And that relates to really the most pertinent code criteria. So as you are having your discussion tonight, I would encourage, ideally each commissioner could answer those guiding questions. If you feel that's appropriate, I think that would help the commission arrive at a decision. And again, those are on page 21. Page 21 also includes options for motions, should you vote to approve or deny. And unless we ever have anything else, that's it from staff.
Okay, could the commissioner, well, the alternates and advisors who visited the site since our last meeting 2 weeks ago, please comment on their visits?
And I will share my screen with your comments on the screen, by the way. Sure, sure.
Who wants to go first? We have, what, 3, 4 of you guys?
Yeah. If you wanna start, I'd be curious.
Yes, I was, per my comments, I was pretty amazed how well the interior was intact. With certainly some damage to, ceiling on the first floor from an open roof, clearly. Was able to walk off the steps and looked around, didn't go too far upstairs, because clearly it might be a bit shaky up there. But the building was much more sound than I thought, looking at it from the exterior. There were horizontal boards on the interior of all walls, which is adding structure to the building. There would be also boards on the exterior that were not as structurally sound, but certainly, I mean, again, I found the interior fairly intact, with some areas of bad, some not so intact areas, but majority of it was intact. I was able to crawl underneath the back end of it, viewing some of the foundation, members. Pictures are all there. Was what I saw underneath there was things were not rotting. Things needed, work, but not rotting to the point of needing demolition by any means. Portions I could not see were maybe buried in earth, so there could be issues there, but hard to see right now with snow and things in the way. I found it totally salvageable and should not be demoed. It is my conclusion.
I have a question about the second floor. I think it was stated at the last meeting that had all collapsed. Was that the case?
I would say no. And I believe the homeowner said he walked around it a year ago, I believe, or something.
I wouldn't walk into the rooms. The rooms have all collapsed floors. But the hallway, you could still walk down that hallway and look in, you know.
But the perimeter of the building is intact. The interior, which is not part of really the structure of the building, was a bit compromised, surely. But on the first floor, there was only one ceiling section falling through, and the photograph showed that.
Richard, do you have a question for Mark?
No, I just had a comment that I walked in most of the rooms up there on the second floor.
Well, I'm glad
But most of them, I didn't jump up and down on them, but I didn't feel any risk at all doing that. They just felt sound. I mean, there are places where you didn't want to walk, but for the most part, I walked in a few of the rooms and down the hallway, and it was fairly solid. It seemed to
Braver
me.
than I was.
Pardon me?
Braver than I was.
Was this a visit you did in the last 2 weeks?
Yes, it was, what day? Last Friday, I believe. Something, it was after I saw you, 2 days after I saw you, so it was recently before it snowed. And
And do you have any additional comments to what Mark offered?
what I noticed, I worked on a project where this picture of the roof that was just exactly like that. And so I looked at the rafters on that roof and they all seemed solid. There was no rot that I could see. And that was similar to a project that I worked on. That they're sagging a little bit. The sheathing is sagging, but for the most part, it looked to me like the rafters were fairly okay.
You
And
guys
the
are
one
both,
picture I handed out is the picture of 109 Oak, that curved to.
Right.
I did not include the barn that you worked on and the pictures because it's technically not relevant to this particular
Okay.
case, so.
So I would concur with the comments that he had.
yeah,
Did you
I-
visit?
you guys both made it farther than I did. I couldn't go up the stairs. I felt uncomfortable being inside, but the outside it looked okay. And it did look salvageable, I would say, but yeah, the inside definitely gave me the heebie-jeebies.
So do the three of you have any sense of what would need to be done to resolve the issues around this building? Do you have an idea of what could be done or would minimally need to be done to salvage the building?
Rebuilding the roof would be top priority.
Mm. Yeah, and I don't know as far as salvaging it's a lot of work.
Well, clear, and I'm not sure what members of the roof would be salvageable or not, but that'd be number one priority is, rebuilding the roof to keep the structure watertight, weather-tight.
What do you think that is
Yeah.
the major issue at this point?
If the roof was fixed so that it did no longer leak, then there'd be no more damage to the rest of the building. And from what I saw from the rafters, I didn't walk all the way from one end to the other, but it looked like they weren't broken and rotten. They were pretty solid. And so,
Are they logs or what?
no, they're full, they look like 2x10s, pretty much. Full 2x10s, and they were intact. And they didn't have a ridge beam, but they met like this, and where they met like that, for the most part, you could see it was still intact. Oh,
So are you looking at this picture, you can see the outside of the roof.
right.
So there's wood on the outside, no shingles. What's on the inside besides the rafters? Anything?
Well, there was like wainscoting, but that's all pretty much collapsed from the inside. But the outside, it's sagging, but like I said, the rafters to me seem pretty solid. And it's just the sheathing that is, sagging and broken and rotted, but the framing seemed to be very good.
And did you have experience with a project similar to this?
It was exactly similar. I wish we'd have those pictures, but
Here in Leadville?
no, it was over at Sylvan Lake. They did an old schoolhouse, and the picture that I sent, the roof looked almost identical to this. What they did was they came in and they reinforced the rafters. They put totally new sheathing on the whole thing and then put shingles on it, and it looked just like new.
And was that a local company that did the work?
It was historical.
Do you know how much it costs for them to do that?
No, I don't know. I don't know how that works, but they work on, public buildings, not on private buildings, but over a period of the summer, they have a series of different crews come in. They supply all the materials and it's a volunteer program for the most part, but I have no idea what the project costs.
They cut the costs of projects a lot. I worked with them. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that they won't do a historic private structure, but yeah, I think they typically work on things that are in the public, that are owned
Right.
by nonprofits or in the public domain.
They do it around the country, they go all around the country, storing the gold.
Sometimes it can be privately owned with public access easement to it, the public easement to the property.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, yeah, there's still money involved, but because they're providing a lot of labor that isn't costing anybody anything. It really cuts the cost of the project a lot. Okay, does anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments?
Well, from walking around, I would push on the walls and lean up against them and that kind of thing to see if there was any wobbling. And it seemed just pretty solid. They say safety, it's unsafe, but it's not anywhere near just gonna fall over or things like that. I didn't get underneath like you did, looking at the foundation, but.
Yes.
I might suggest that Natalie Ward again with Formworks was recently part of a group that worked on the North London Rehabilitation Project on the other side of Mosquito Pass. And I just saw a presentation about it at the conference last month in Boulder. And they took the mine office building, which was crumbling, falling apart, and completely restored it to use it as like a rental unit almost for backcountry skiers. And I imagine that she's got a very good idea on the costs and what was done and what was required. It's a different building, but similar work that was done. And I think she could probably provide some numbers. They got a lot of grants to do that project.
Mhm. And they're turning that into some sort of public, some sort of center for Nordic skiing and things like that, I believe.
Yeah, it's privately owned and it's for all backcountry skiing.
Mhm. Okay, any other comments? If not, I guess we can open it up to the owners to rebut anything that's been said or add to it.
Kathy?
Thanks, honey.
Yeah.
All right. I would like to just ask just some clarification of the three commissioners that Chapin said were going in. Can the first person who responded, that advisory member number one, I kind of can't quite hear, sometimes the Zoom garbles. So can you put the camera on the one that did this first? I think it might be Mark. Mark, are you the first commissioner that went in? Is that road advisory member number one?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right. Could you, I'm glad you got to go in. In fact, I'm glad whoever the other two are, because you guys might be the last public that ever gets to see the inside of this place. Because if it doesn't get torn down, really, the public never gets to see what you guys saw. So that's pretty special that you got that spirit and the history of what was going on back then. My question is that, sorry for the public, can't figure out a way to get behind it on all three sides and see what you saw under the foundation and see those big logs. But they'll never, if I understand it right, the public, even if you can get the app working the way you want it, the public never goes around the building, does it? It just is going to look from Oak Street and see that front side and maybe hear a story of someone telling the background of it. But the whole inside, they'll never get to see, nor behind it. Because if we were to build a house or someone else builds something, people just don't get to go on other people's property, is my guess. Is that right? So that the walking tour will be, I know I asked this first person, I was going to ask a question about that, but I sort of wanted to get this walking tour a little understood. Someone would walk by Oak Street and look up and see the front face of that, right? No one ever goes in or around the building, right?
Well, there's a couple of different types of tours that, historic walking tours that we're discussing as a commission. And one of them is, once a year, yes, people can go inside if that's what the owner wishes. We don't, the walking tour would be, the general walking tour would be from the outside, yes. But we also talked about having once a year where people can actually go inside old Victorian homes or even businesses that are historic, if the owner wants to open them up for that once a year tour. So it's not unheard of that they would not ever, the public would never see the inside of that, because it's quite possible if you as an owner or any other owner that owned that property would, allow that to be on the tour, then they would be able to go inside, as long as it was safe and, you know, stabilized.
That's what I'm kind of getting at. This would have to be brought up to some pretty high standards to admit the public in. And now we're back to the cost of insurance on a building, the water, the electric, all the taps that have to go into it. And that, so I'm sort of trying to see what could be the use, because if I understand Chapin's, one line that we really have to dial in is what is the rehabilitation reasonableness and what is the use? So if the use is for, to save it as an historic structure so that people can see it, that's quite costly. I was going to ask this, Mark. Mark, I highlighted, you said that the ceiling damage in the east room, the foundation needs some resupporting, the roof is compromised, exterior's in rough shape, and yet the overall assessment is that it's totally salvageable. Well, it is salvageable. I think we'd all agree on that, and we'd all want it. But what is the reasonable use of it to make it salvageable? That's what I'd kind of like to hear the Historic Preservation Committee help the homeowners with. What is this use? What is this use for? And is it reasonable to fix it up for that use? Because we're not, what do I want to say? We're not business owners. We're not about to put in a restaurant or a laundromat. That's, you know, this is kind of a neighborhood and a home. It was a home feeling, not a business tourist welcome in kind of attitude that we went into living in Leadville. So I'm kind of tripping up over what is a reasonable use for you guys? What do you see based on, and how do you see it getting fixed up and for a reasonable cost? So that's open to anybody on the HPC. I don't think you need to come up with figures of how much would it cost to make the rafters work and do all the stuff, because I think it's all going to be, you know, ballpark figures, and they'll all probably be higher than anybody, you know, ever wants to pay. So what is the HPC's offer here? Not offer in terms of money, but offer in terms of idea. How do you take something like that and preserve it when it's, as Steve said, it is falling down. And now all three neighbors around us have come forth and said they really wish it would come down. The neighbor on the south did, Spook on the north just did. He came over and said, what happened last week? And I said, well, they're still deciding. I said, I thought for sure he wanted to stay. He did not. He said he wanted that thing down. And so I'm kind of surprised that the neighbors on the street had that attitude, but that's not what we base this on. But it's worth hearing all the sides. And I think Damien and I are doing pretty well hearing what you guys are saying, but I've yet to hear the one thing that this has to hinge on is what's the reasonable use and for reasonable cost. I think, is that right, Chapin? Is that that's the thing that HPC needs to decide? You have language to it. I think it's fairly clear. And I don't want to take everybody's time here, but I would like to hear what you guys might say on if you've thought about anything like that.
No, go ahead, Chapin.
So to answer that, so yes, that is essentially the question. That is the guided questions, you know, they're a little bit more technical, but the guided questions are really related to that. Those are the ones on page 21 of your packet. Those are also discussed higher up in the report on page, the bottom of page 18, the top of page 19. That really gets to the core of what the applicant was just discussing.
Could I ask you a question? When you bought that, when you bought that, it was like 5 years ago or something?
Yeah, 7 years ago.
7. When you bought it, did you have something in mind to do?
Oh, I wanted to preserve the barn. And like I said at the first meeting, we talked to 2 roofing companies. One wouldn't do it, said it was too dangerous. And then the other person we talked to said it would cost up to $70,000 to put a roof on it, which for us was out of the question. Probably double that now, huh? I mean, who knows? But if there'd be a way to get some sort of grant to put a roof on there, would be completely happy with that. But we can't put the roof on.
Right, but you had intended when you got it was to try to save it as a barn?
Oh, I think, I just love the building. It's a beautiful building, and for whatever reason, it exudes good karma. It really does. I've never felt bad around that building. So, you know, I mean, it would be great to keep it, but without a roof, how long will it take before it comes out? 5 years, 7 years?
Not know that answer.
Can I, and what is your name? The one with the blue hat?
That's me, I'm Kurt.
Hi, Kurt. Okay. We also were hoping to build a small house to live in back there. And the only reason this has come up is because our property taxes hit $6,000. When we bought that in 2017, it was $600. And every year it has climbed, and the bill came and it's $6,000 due Friday or this Thursday. So that has propelled us to say, wait a minute, there's an elephant in the room here with these properties. And now that there's an historic structure on it, it's a strange place that nobody really wants to talk about or get in touch with, because everybody's got a view of what to do. But that's part of the reason that this is coming up is it's not affordable anymore for us to hold that property vacant with the historic property on it.
Right,
So-
was there an appraisal on that building? Is that why it's $6,000, or is it just
I
one?
went,
city lot?
I talked to who's ever in charge of that behind the counter when you walk in, and that basically they said they have no idea. That's what I got. They have no idea why.
Commercial.
They can't do anything.
It's zoned commercial,
Oh,
so
It
that's a
is, it
different
is.
tax. Yes.
For
Because
tax.
Right, for tax zoning, which is what she's talking about, property taxes, it is zoned commercial because it's a boarding house. It's always been a boarding house or a shop or something like that, as Chapin pointed out in the staff report. So it's not just a barn that sat, with other things, it was an actual business and a boarding house and stores. So that's why the property taxes are what they're at. It's not a residential property.
And we did not know that, Kurt, when we bought that in 2017. We just saw a beautiful structure and
right.
property behind it. So we're learning now that this is, this is part of what brings people to Leadville, is to see these buildings up.
Do they tax it as if it was a viable business? If there was a
Yes.
business there? Is that how that
Somebody-
works?
That answer needs to come directly from Lake County Tax Assessor. Like, we can't answer that as staff for the city.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever thought selling it as is in hopes
Hey,
somebody,
I'll sell the whole property barn for $1.5 million.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you put it out there though?
No.
Nothing like,
No, but it looks like that's, well, that's what we came in for originally. We talked to Chapin and he said there are 3 lots there, but the barn can't be on it if you want to sell it per lot. So because the barn spans 2 of the lots, so if we could sell each lot individually,
I see.
it would be maybe more profitable than selling the entire property, but we haven't looked into that. The first thing we had to see is if we could take the barn down, and then we would go to the other. If we can't take the barn down, there's no sense in looking at 3 lots. So
Mhm.
so that's where we are. But yes, we're looking to sell the property.
Okay,
Is that, there's that fence on the south side?
South side, yeah,
That's the property line?
that's it. That is the property.
It doesn't go, there's another lot next to that goes all the way out to the
Street.
street. Is
Yeah.
that part of it, or is that?
No, that's not. That's Solomon's property.
That's,
That's not ours, yeah, but, and Steve knows Bob, but, Bob, the original fence line cut Solomon's property almost a third into it, so he asked us to take it down, and we redid the fence along the property line, so that all 4 fences are on the property line at this point.
and that's 3 city lots. Is that?
3 city lots.
Well, as far as a reasonable use for it, that's an issue that's being dealt with by, Hayden Meadows. And, CMC owns that, and they had a study done, and it came up with a number of possible uses for that that property. And, they tended to focus on educational use, one way or another, and outdoor use, or both. And, the thing is, it takes a while to develop a plan that's reasonable and then find a way to make it work. And so I think, you know, I can think of possible uses for this building if it were not torn down. In terms of, you know, museums, or a historic structure that you could go into. I mean, wasn't there, no, I'm trying to remember, this was a boarding house, but there were other uses for it too, right? Was there a grocery store there at one time?
Yeah, just very early on in the late 1800s, yes, there were, I think it was, meat market. It was the Milwaukee Hotel, which had an office, restaurant, kitchen. It was a meat market, and it was a boarding house before it became a club.
Mhm. So there, you know, there are educational or historic uses that it could build into or be part of, but it's something that if it's torn down in the next 6 months, those aren't going to be possible at all. And coming up with these plans, making them happen can take a long time. I don't have a good solution for how you deal with the taxes.
Yeah,
between-
next year's 12,000. It's been doubling. It's 100% every single year since we bought it, so that makes it $12,000 next year. That's, you know, out of our range for sure. The other thing too is, at one time, we offered the building to the city. I don't think my wife and I are as benevolent now feeling towards the city. So I don't think that would happen, but we would have to talk that over. If the city would take the building, you know, but,
They have been known to take on big projects like the Tabor Opera House
yeah.
that need millions of dollars of work. So there is some precedent for it, but I can't speak for the city. And we have a new mayor, new people on city council, so I don't know how approachable they would be to that sort of idea. So we don't have a definite plan for you as to how this building could be used tonight. But we have to make a decision tonight about whether it can be, a demolition COA can be issued, or if we want to deny that. Yes,
Make another comment?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so, I think along the idea of trying to preserve the building, a quick fix on the roof would be to get the 10 mil reinforced plastic. When I checked on this for my house, it would, a 20 by 40 section of it cost $200. So the major expense would be getting the labor to put that on there. But I think the material for that, I'm not sure what the square footage is, but it should be less than $1,000 in material to cover that roof. And that would last for maybe 2 years, and then you have to redo it again. So, and I think that roof has been deteriorating like that the whole time I've been there. I mean, a little more has flaked off, but basically it's been like that for the 28 years I've lived in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Steve.
Well, that would take care of one issue.
I mean, I didn't even think of that, but hard plastic over, 20 mil plastic on that or whatever.
Yeah, 10 mil is the best. They make 6 mil and 10 mil. The 10 mil will last longer. They have some advertised on eBay, and I didn't really get into it, but it's for making greenhouses, and they say that will last 6 years or a decade. So maybe there is something that's more sun resistant.
Yeah.
Staff's just gonna, remind, this is a public hearing, we do need to stick to a more formal format, and we have just a time check. We do have 2 other agenda items that probably need 20-30 minutes each, and it's 5:07.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna, just, recommend the commission try to get to a recommendation in a motion for the next 10 to 15 minutes. And just remind me of those guiding questions on page 21.
Okay, and do we have a city council meeting at 6?
We do not.
Good, I guess. Okay, so we can just keep going until we have gotten through all our business. All right, any more, let's see, where are we? So we've had the rebuttal. Now I guess, any more comments
Thank you.
from,
Thank you.
from the commission, or do I have a recommendation for what to do?
Can we answer the questions that staff have requested first on page 21?
Which one is page 21?
I'm
We
sorry,
don't,
it's
we don't ever
after-
get page numbers on these.
So,
No.
It's the one.
so last page of the staff report.
He has
Yeah.
highlighted on the updates from 213, there was a
Yeah.
highlighted, it's the
Yeah.
page after that highlight. That's
Oh, okay.
It says questions for the commission, bold and underline the recommendation.
Right, okay, so in regards to criterion 2, the structure cannot be rehabilitated or reused on site to provide any reasonable beneficial use of the property. Does the commission find complete dismantlement and reconstruction is the only way for the structure to be compatibly used? Do we have any comments from members of the commission or our advisors? I think we've actually heard those already. And I think if I'm not speaking for people out of line, I think the sense is, no, that's not the case. Is that correct? Do you all agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Scott?
Okay, let's have everybody check,
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
Scott, your comments on that?
2 of you, but make sure I get it.
Yeah, that was the sense I got from listening to Kurt and Mark's comments, for sure.
By compatibly used, you're defining that as any use that would be allowed through a certificate of occupancy.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the staff report.
Mick, your thoughts on question 1A?
I agree as though, yeah. I don't think I'm with you, yeah.
Okay, I'm not trying to force that. I'm just trying to give a sense of what I heard that I think was where we were going.
Yeah, the next one is where I'm,
So then question 2, does the commission agree with the main?
I don't think,
Can we get Nancy and Kurt's answer to 1A first?
Sorry.
Sorry.
I concur with the group. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I concur.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Whittington, go ahead.
Okay, sorry for jumping the gun. I don't have a script.
It's my fault, so really.
Okay, so then B, is a moot point. So then question 2, does the commission agree with the remainder of staff's analysis?
Scott?
so now that the commission has answered question 1, I just want to, if you go back a few pages, under discussion of code criteria 2. And basically just in the body of the report, I also included that question. So I just want to basically say what staff's recommendation would now be, because we were not making a recommendation previously until that question had been answered. But the bottom is, visually, it's page 18 of the packet, but it's the page at the very bottom of the page says, if the commission finds. And it's right under question 1. Is everybody there? Okay, so staff's recommendation, now you've answered that question, is that if the commission finds that complete dismantlement and reconstruction is not the only way for the structure to be compatibly used, and with the additional clarification that compatible use means it's able to receive a certificate of occupancy from the Lake County Building Department. And staff would recommend the proposed demolition does not comply with standard 2.
Right. Well, so let's hear everybody's comment about that.
Well, see, certificate of occupancy, how is that determined? I mean, does it have to have water and electricity and all of that? Is that included in certificate of occupancy? Yes?
Yeah, a certificate of occupancy would have to meet it would be the IEBC, the International Existing Building Code, which would, and there are a variety of occupancies under the code, correct? So there are residential occupancies, there's commercial occupancies, there's institutional, et cetera. I'm not a building official, so I can't speak to all of the requirements. But generally speaking, yeah, that would be my understanding, that it would need to have, it would need to be safe for the public, or it would need to be safe for either residential, commercial, institution, or some other classified occupancy.
Based on what we did at the Matchless Mine, it would not have to have water. It wouldn't have to be something that somebody could live in, but it could still be issued a certificate of occupancy, but not as a residence.
Right. And there's some, I can't remember all the classifications, but there's some classification for it.
Oh.
Does anybody want to jump in on what they think about that?
I'm not sure.
Scott, what do you? Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah, so if we find that, we think it could be rehabilitated without complete dismantlement and reconstruction, which at least I continue to think that was the sense of the commission and tend to agree with myself, then that would mean that it doesn't comply with this number 2, and this is in a section where the application would need to meet all of these criteria in order for us to recommend a COA for demolition.
That's correct. Yeah,
I would therefore be against demolition. That is my train of thought.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well said.
Nancy?
Yeah.
Okay, so the commission's in complete agreement about that aspect.
Are we
Unless-
ready for
Do you
motion?
want a voice vote or anything?
Just make sure there's no further discussion.
Yeah.
Uh,
But I think you've come to an agreement and can do the motion like Scott just said. Unless you want to discuss it anymore, make sure everybody's on the same page there.
I heard everybody agree.
Okay,
And I imagine we're ready for a motion.
so yeah, if there's not any further discussion from any commissioners, there's an option for a motion for approval and denial. Page 21 of the packet, it's on a page that has the section titles, questions for the commission and recommendation, bottom of the page. Just going to point out staff is again recommending that the motion be based on findings, and findings are included for both possible recommendations on the 2 next pages in your packet.
So there's, page after the recommendations, there's denial findings and approval findings.
Correct.
So may I have someone make a motion one way or another and justify it, please?
I'll give it a try. I move the Historic Preservation Commission recommend that the City Council deny the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of a historic structure PL-2024-006 located at 109 Oak Street, along with the attached denial findings, for the reason that we believe the structure can be rehabilitated without a complete dismantlement and reconstruction.
Is that-
Well done.
Does that sound acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a second?
I will second that.
All right, any discussion before we take a voice vote? All right, we have a motion and it's been seconded. So Laurie, could we have a voice vote on this, please?
Sure. Commissioner Lindquist,
No, right?
actually, it's yes.
It's just
because
yes.
You're voting for.
Right, okay, so
Deny.
yes,
Okay, making sure you understand.
yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Spillman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whittington,
Yes.
and Commissioner Flattiger.
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
unanimously passed to deny. The recommendation to deny.
Okay, so then for the applicants, the next step is that this goes to city council when, next week?
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
So you, I believe, have the option of speaking to city council, contesting this if you care to. And they ultimately are the ones who make the decision based on the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission. So the fact that we voted to deny the COA is not the final step in this process. We only make a recommendation to city council and they are the ones who make the final decision.
The only other thing to do is to close the public hearing for 109 Oak Street.
Okay, I will close the public hearing on 109 Oak Street. Thank you very much. And I will go get Joey.
I can text him.
Well, I need the restroom anyway.
Oh, okay, you go right ahead. You take it through my office. We're not sure which.
Yeah. She needs to come back.
So we technically.
Yeah, it's
I can share.
a matter of procedure. I'm just gonna wait until we begin the next work session. Well,
Cozy.
Where is it?
Yeah.
We're so happy when they came in.
No, he does that. It's just like, the only thing that he does is not.
That's not perfect.
It comes across every time these come up. It's like the possibility of saying, I can't fix it up. And somewhere along that, they're going aware. Right, that's not a justification. For.
Your photos were so much better than mine were. I took like 3 inside, I was like scared, like I just. But outside, yeah, I did more.
I've climbed in a lot of old buildings.
Yeah, you see it, I know, I'm like,
Kurt was still brave or not, what was I?
yeah, couldn't do it.
We're, this is just the next step.
I'll show you.
All real
In the work session, historic street. And then.
Germany. So he's got the
Sure, well, just considering.
Well, they bought it.
Chair of the work session.
You and Kurt probably weigh the same. I don't think I can weigh 220 pounds.
Well,
I'd say it's less about the problem, yeah, I mean, what, but it'll say, but, and you can still say, right, you can still make false.
I understand, I'll just.
You know, it's the same,
Yeah.
it's the same thing when you get it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you get. What the deal from?
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes. Yes, yes. It's not a historical. Yeah, well, it's just an engineer. That's. I do.
He's not structural engineer.
Really excited.
Yeah.
Okay.
We made it.
We're good.
Oh.
We can,
Still have
it didn't really say.
We didn't say.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, thank you for your patience. Moving on to be under new and continued business. So work session tonight on Traders Market rehabilitation of 200 East Sixth Street. Just to let everybody know, I am potentially the contractor on record for this project. So I will recuse myself as chair for this discussion, and Steve, have you as acting chair for the discussion.
But Steve, good news is staff's just gonna take it from here, so you
Yeah.
don't need to do it.
Are you doing?
Work session.
And Commissioner Edwards is taking off his commissioner hat and putting on his contractor hat and being on the other side of this discussion to answer any questions we might have from the contractor.
Okay,
So,
all right.
if that
Sorry,
makes
the
sense.
commissioner here maintains his seat here.
Is it okay if you guys stay up here on the dais?
No, Dave.
A little bit.
Okay.
I'm gonna take this over. It's okay. All right, so this is a work session for a rehabilitation project. Just to remind everyone who's participating tonight, a work session, so this is an informal process. At this point in time, work sessions are free. That has now changed, but this work session is free to the applicant. It's a tool that's recommended by staff. We have two work sessions on the agenda tonight for an applicant to come in front of the commission to gain valuable feedback on key issues that might be identified by the applicant, by staff, or by the commission. And then that gives the commission an opportunity to communicate feedback and kind of the preliminary decision-making back to the applicant so that they can respond to any comments in advance of submitting a formal COA application. This project would require a formal COA, and then, there's public notice, et cetera, involved. So, any questions on formats of our, the purpose of a work session? All right. So I will just quickly introduce the project and project's background, the applicable code sections. I'm not gonna go a lot into code compliance and evaluation tonight, in the interest of time. And I am going to then open it up to the applicant, unless you have any questions for staff, open it to the applicant to explain some of the background and purpose of the project and some of the details. Then we can just go into some questions and discussion, have an informal discussion. So if there are any questions on that, I'll move on. So this project is a commercial building. The background of the structure is that it is a listed building on our historical building inventory. It was constructed in 1883. I'll start sharing my screen here shortly to show some pictures. It was originally used as a grocery store, and the Sanborn maps labeled that at one point in time it was a Sayer's office in the 1930s. So the proposed project, the scope of work is to rehabilitate both the interior and the exterior of the building, and the proposed use will be a restaurant and bar. And you can see that in the applicant's plans and renderings. I'm just gonna quickly go through the Sanborn maps, and I'll show this on the screen. So there's been some change, a little bit of change to this property, especially to the rear of this property and to the surroundings, since the early 1800s, 1883. Early 1880s. So as you can see, 1883, the Sanborn map shows an office in the front, and I believe this that was the former structure, it's my understanding. So then after this 1883 Sanborn map, it's my understanding that there could have been enough, that the current building could have been constructed. Because that 1883 map does not match the 1886 map, and the building, is noted to be constructed in 1883. So originally, in 1886, uses a grocery and meat market. You can kind of see some of the rear functions, back of house operations, they're shown on the map, for, I think first, the smoking. And smoking meats that kind of continues into 1889. So changes shown on the map between 1889 and 1895. And then 1937, more of the building's current form and footprint, shown in the 1937 sample.
So the buildings adjacent to that building would go between 1885 and 1889. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so in your packet, the applicant has included some plans and perspective drawings that kind of help show the scope of work. I would like to tonight, one of the most important jobs for staff in these work sessions is just getting us all on the same page as to what codes apply. So this building is outside of Harrison Avenue, so we do not have local design guidelines for this project, for this property. We have really two things that apply. We have code excerpts, we have code sections starting on page 66 of my packet. Says 1744-50 at the top, procedures for historic structure designation and revocation. I think it's like one page after the Sanborn maps. So those are the code sections that apply. And that continues through 1744-60. And then the last code section is just a reference to the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines, which is the second level of applicable rules. And I've also included that in your packet. So this is excerpts from 4 pages of the Secretary of Interior standards. So I've included the general standards for rehabilitation. So those are the requirements that are adopted by our code. And I've also included the specific guidelines for storefronts. And I think there's about 8 or so bullet points. There's guidelines that are recommended, and there's guidelines for things that are not recommended. The scope of work, we'll start going to the plans. This is the existing conditions. So as you can see here, you have a historic building that maintains that corner entry and more of an original storefront on the right-hand side. You have a sign that's in the transom here. And then on the left side of the building, you have, for lack of a better word, hodgepodge windows. And then you have a garage door, which is obviously not original construction. So I'll let the applicant speak to this, but we don't have any documentation of what was originally in this western facade. And then we have a flat roof with like a sloping parapet. So if you look at the proposed renderings, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm gonna let the applicant maybe go into some of the history that they have in their narrative. Right. So look at the proposed rendering, you can see that scope of work includes reintroducing that transom above the front entry, that the glazing there. Maintaining those original windows and openings on the south facade, maintaining the corner facing entry. On the western facade, proposed new window openings, that are more storefront, not totally storefront like this south facade, but more storefront windows. And obviously removal of the garage door, and there's a secondary egress door, there that's proposed. And also you can see that there's more of a parapet wall. Previously, there was like a sloping parapet wall. That parapet wall has been raised on kind of left-hand side of the screen to match what's on the corner. I'm not gonna go into all the detail of the proposed scope of work, but that is essentially, now summarize the applicable standards, code sections, standards and guidelines from Secretary of Interior, and the proposed scope of work. And then, unless there are any questions for me, I can then turn it over to the applicant to fill in all the details. Tonight, I didn't have a lot of time to go do a full evaluation of the code's compliance, but I think we can probably get the same thing done either way tonight.
Very good. Is Morgan, are you on Zoom?
Yeah, I am.
Would you like to make a quick presentation?
Sure. Yeah, sorry I couldn't be there in person. I did get a crazy stomach bug. I blame my children, so I'm sorry that prefer to be there in person talking about this to you guys. But thanks for taking time to look at it. We were approached by the owners a couple months back, and they had an interest to look at kind of retrofitting this existing commercial building to a bar restaurant, which we felt like was probably a good use for that, just based on some of the historical codes and keeping with the commercial intent of the building. We were pretty early on in the process. We're doing a lot of like kind of due diligence stuff in terms of evaluating the existing building, with engineers and contractors. And yeah, we did have a work session on our previous project at 311, 313, which was very valuable. So yeah, we just we wanted to get this in front of the commission sooner rather than later. Nothing is set in stone. But I think the general intent is to, kind of maintain as much as possible at that more historic southwest corner entry. I think we do have questions on the west side. The south side seems much more straightforward, just because our proposed scope of work is much smaller. Like Chapin mentioned, we couldn't find much documentation in terms of that west-facing historical facade. And I think the only other thing that's worth mentioning is that entire west wall is kind of detaching itself from the brick structure to the east. The general consensus seems to be that there was a fire at some point that pulled that wooden structure away from the brick structure to the east, so that there is the west exterior wall is, I forget exactly, but there's almost a foot difference between the sill plate at the floor and the top of the wall. So whatever we decide to do there, or collaborate on there, it's something has to happen just for the life safety issues for the building. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
You said that was the west wall?
Yeah, that's the longer wall that we're looking at there on the left.
I think you meant east.
So to clarify a little bit of background, there was most definitely a fire inside of the building sometime in the past. And best that we can put together, that west wall, as you would be well familiar, leans to the west, about a foot from the bottom to the top. The top is about a foot farther out than the top is. A lot of that is from subsidence from ice and snow weight on the roof. But what caused that to begin subsiding was the fire. The fire up in the rafters in that building, probably something between 30 and 50 years ago, actually pulled the building away from the adjacent buildings on the east side. So the whole building leans to the side. It needs to be rebuilt. Structurally, it needs to be rebuilt, and it's needed to be rebuilt since it was cosmetically patched probably 50 years ago, probably around the 1960s, 1970s is when I would estimate that happened. So that west wall, the one that you see on Poplar Street, the one that has the 3 windows on the side that you see in your photographs, that wall needs to be completely rebuilt. The windows that are in it, as you guys know, it was a glass and frame shop for many years.
Yeah.
We're cobbled into that space, and done without any structural work, so there aren't any proper headers. There isn't any proper structure in that wall to keep it held up, so it's continued to shift very slightly over the years, and just as a maintenance point, that wall needs to be replaced. John and Danny, would you like to say anything about the building, or?
I have no comment this time.
Okay. John and Danny are 2 of the owners, and are here tonight. And what they're trying to do, as you can see in the drawings, is replicate, we know for a fact, well, we don't know for a fact, but we know that the windows on the south facade facing 6th Street are the oldest original windows in the building. Those windows in that corner facade are the oldest parts of that structure, and luckily, those parts of the structure are reasonably sound. So the intention of the architect and the new owners is to replicate that pattern, that 4 square tall pattern of windows that you have on the south wall, and carry that down the west wall, so that we maintain that character all the way around the building. That wall needs to be replaced anyway structurally. So that's the reason for this photograph, if you can see it in your packet, is carrying design of the windows on the south facade, on the 6th Street side, and carry them all the way around the side of the building to maintain that character.
Does it show any of the original openings? Are you able to see any of the original openings on the west side, or no?
That wall has been rebuilt 3 or 4 times, usually using a saw and scrap lumber. So no, it's impossible to see I don't know if it was a solid wall or if there was a line of glass, but the windows that are there were put in, they're different sizes, they're different heights. They don't have proper headers, there's no structure to them. They were put in to add life for a workshop, but there's no rhyme or reason to them, and I don't expect them to be original. I'm certain that the windows going across that wall, but there's no telling what they originally were.
Yeah, and just one other thing, guys, to mention, those windows, you'll see the ones on the west that step down from the corner, and that's not based on any aesthetic. It's more that the roof trusses are dropping as they go to the back of the building. So to maintain the existing roof structure, that's why that was intentionally dropped, because otherwise they run into the roof trusses toward the north side of the building.
Sure. Questions, or can we clarify anything?
That the siding, is that gonna be like, like hardy board or? Yeah,
We're adjacent to an existing commercial structure, so the siding will need to be of a fireproof nature. So I would assume that would be cement board, hardy board, something of that like. The intention would be to go away from, this siding was added probably in the 70s, and it's a 12-inch lap, and it's just inexpensive composite.
Right.
The intention would be to go back with a more historically appropriate 4.5 to 5-inch lap.
Good.
And mimic the lap siding on adjacent historic
Well,
buildings.
that'd be good.
The other buildings on this row, you guys will be familiar with, are all brick buildings. This particular building is stick built, it is not a brick building. It was the original building, it was standing there before the brick buildings were built adjacent to it.
And it would kind of fit in with those 2 houses behind it.
It would match the lap siding of the houses adjacent on that part of 6th and 7th Street.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. And that would be the intention.
Yeah, my question is, on the west side at the top, you're no longer having it slant down. But that looks like it probably was original to the building, so how can you justify, I like the flatter the way it looks now, I mean, the way you're proposing to design it, but can you really justify that historically?
Well, we can, the flat roof on that building is behind this facade. And a lot of if you look at the garage door and see how the garage door has buckled.
Yeah.
I don't think the side wall originally sloped, I think it sloped, but it sloped very slightly, it didn't slope the way it does, the back of that building is actually dropped about a foot. So it's an exaggerated slant. Then we'd be curing in an effort to hide any mechanicals up on the roof. But also, the building didn't originally slant as much as it does front to back, as it does now. That happened because of subsidence. Bringing it back up, we'll put it in line with the straight line facades of the buildings on East Sixth Street, that are adjacent to the building. Those run flat front to back, and this would be to mimic those other existing buildings.
So you're saying you don't think it was intentional that it was sloping?
It definitely sloped, but it sloped very slightly. Now it's a very exaggerated slope because the back of that building is subsided so badly.
Because the girl.
That, you can see where that's happened by that garage door. That garage door is in the process of collapsing.
And the roof kind of follows the slope of that parapet, it's not.
The roof does, that's right. That flat roof slopes front to back. And so it did originally follow that slope front to back. It just wasn't as exaggerated as it is now. By bringing that facade up flat, we'll still have a sloping flat roof on top of that building. But by bringing that false wall up flat, it would mimic the look of the buildings, Pasanko's building and the two middle buildings there that are adjacent to that. Those buildings are flat front to back. Morgan, you're welcome to speak to that as well, please.
Yeah, no, I think that was a good summary of it. I do think it's accentuated, and I do think that it's the commercial character would lend itself to creating a higher parapet there, as well as safety for working on the roof. But I know that's not a main concern here in this conversation.
It's true. Bringing that false wall flat front to back on that west facing wall does not affect visibility for many of the adjacent houses behind it. The alleyway there and then the houses on 7th Street are not affected visibly by that rise. That rise would probably be a total of something like 12 to 18 inches from where it is currently. That's a guess on my part, but I didn't foresee any visibility changes. We're not changing the height of the front of the building at all.
I had a question.
Please.
That, over the entranceway is what's there now is in 3 sections, and then the one that's proposed is in 2 sections. Is that historic, that three sections facing 6th Street and over the entrance? You're right.
Yeah, basically you went from the 3 there, like 1, 2, 3, to just the 2, because that goes off like that. Is what he's asking about. That makes sense?
Yeah.
This makes sense, and I see what you're saying. The reason for that is because we can incorporate that third or that left-hand panel on your photograph and run it all the way to the back of the building. The change there currently is just the color of trim, otherwise you wouldn't see that transition. That's on the same plane and flat as you go into that west-facing wall.
Oh, it is, oh. Oh.
So the trick.
So our 45 is only over the front door. The left-hand side of that 45 is parallel to the rest of that west-facing wall. It's not a different angle.
Oh, it's not, okay.
Stuart?
The building as it exists right now, it looks like there's some adornment and some dental work, and is there any effort to replace that or preserve that?
No, the intention is to restore the original dental work on the front of that building. There's very little change that we're making to that front, and it's not drawn in on the computer renderings.
Okay, that's.
But the intention is to keep all that, some very nice dental work on that south facing wall and a little bit of it over the 45 facade. The intention is to keep that, and then to use the colors of that currently in the design of the new building.
Thank you.
For the design of the renovated building. But no, it absolutely intend to keep that.
I have a very odd question. Would the intent be to keep the transom sign, the one, you know, the sign on the transom window, or would you want to put the sign for the business on that flat part thing right there? And that, like I said, it's kind of a silly question, but
No, the
looking back historically, it's always been on the inside of the transom.
Well, it is, and it is fitted into that window opening. The intention is to use that transom window to transmit light because of its direction into the building, because it can provide light
Right.
year round. John or Danny or Morgan, can you speak to the signage on the building and where the signage would be relocated to?
Or have you even gotten that far? Because it may be ahead.
I thought that was something that you might dictate how we could do that. I know there was a piece on that south facing side with a little chain that they hung something there originally.
The original sign bracket is still there, yes?
Yes, I didn't know, I don't think we had any idea of what we would be allowed to do.
I think the intention, and Morgan, please speak to this as well. A lot of the signage would be actually on the glass, so that you don't limit light coming into the building, and so that you don't block any of the existing architectural features. And we'll turn, so the glass and mirror sign that's there currently is covering up the transom window. Now, it's, they just put it in the window.
In that area.
So the intention would be to open that up, which would be more historically accurate, because the transom window would have let in light and warmth, year round. And then transfer the signage. My assumption always was that the signage would be transferred to the glass. So that it doesn't take up the side, but Morgan, you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously walking around downtown, it's really odd to have signage on your transom, like Joey was saying. So, you know, we would like to kind of take that back to what a transom is for, which is to transfer light. And then, yeah, Lori, partly you're right. It's just we haven't necessarily got there. We're open to input on the signage, but I think everyone so far has been talking about it as being fairly understated, and whether that's on the glass or, you know, some other way, it's certainly not meant to be the focus of that corner.
It would seem fitting to go on the wall above the transom.
Yeah.
So that you'd have visibility from from Poplar Street and from Sixth Street and also from downtown. Because the challenge for this space, just like any of the spaces off of Harrison Avenue, is to draw traffic up the street. So being slightly higher would be an excellent option.
From staff's perspective, I don't know that would be atypical for the area. If you look at, the buildings that are immediately adjacent, there is historic, you know, painted signage. I'm kind of highlighting that on screen right there.
And you can see the Synco's building, which is on the far right of that group of signs. That original historic painted signage is above the transom lines.
It should be above this, so I think that, you know, the established character of the area would allow signage, kind of on this area of the building.
Right, and that's kind of what I was thinking in asking that question, because it frees up the transom to the light, like it would normally be back in the day. Thank you.
Scott, any questions? Or comments?
Yeah, I think my only question is regarding the siding. I noticed that you have it under the windows as well. Was the plan to do the siding there, or to have some sort of like kick plate under the windows?
We've discussed potentially doing metal underneath from a longevity standpoint. But we're trying to, currently, that building has the siding underneath the original south-facing windows.
Okay.
So we were keeping that character around the side of the building to maintain that all the way around. And that original, those windows sit about 20 inches off the ground. Obviously for snow mitigation below the glass. We were carrying that character around, but it has been discussed potentially doing something more permanent, you know, to minimize snow damage there. But we're trying to keep it as historically accurate as we can based on that original south facade.
Okay, sounds good.
I guess I keep going back to that slanting roof. Looking at the Secretary of Interior standards, I think maybe numbers 2, 3, and 4 might be relevant to that, to changing that roof line. So it's just something to consider and really think about hard. Because it is kind of changing what was the historic character of that side. I mean, that's the one part of that side of the building that you know more or less, about whereas you don't know anything about the windows.
You said, the SOI standards 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, I think those might be relevant.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can look at.
So we're just here to give feedback tonight, so that's my feedback. I mean, I like the way the design is, and so in a way, it's a shame to hassle you about it, but I'm just looking at the standards.
Just to read into that a little bit, I'm just gonna, standard number 2, says the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. I'm not gonna read the second part of it, so, that one, we'll be talking about whether or not that sloping roof is part of the, the historic character. Standard number 3 is talking about each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use, and changes that create a false sense of historical development will not be undertaken. And then standard number 4 is changes to a property that acquired historic significance in their own right will be retained and preserved. So the question would be, has the sloping facade, the upper facade, has it acquired historic significance in its own right? So just trying to read into that a little bit.
Okay, any other feedback for the contractor or the owners or the architect?
I just had a comment that in the rendering, the entranceway looks wider than in the photograph of the building itself. Is that just?
I think that that's an effect of the colors that were used for the rendering. The intention is to keep, and Morgan, please speak up if I'm incorrect, but the intention, I believe, is to keep a single commercial glass door entrance. There's not enough room in that existing framework to do a double door. But the trim around that door is a dark colored where it's white in the photograph. And so it seems smaller, but I don't believe it's smaller. It remains a single glass commercial entry door. As it is existing.
That's right. I think it's partly just tweaking the rendering in Photoshop makes it look a little bit off because we're getting that perspective. But yeah, the elevations provide a lot more of the accurate detail.
Okay.
Another assumption that we're making is our assumption in looking at the building, and we haven't done the demo to verify it yet, but in the photograph, the white photograph, the left-hand side, the side that you were asking about earlier, Kurt, is solid siding. Our assumption is that the glass was on both sides originally, that there were 3 glass sides. And the intention is to bring it back to 3 glass sides, as you will see in the rendering.
Okay.
We'll be adding additional light to come into the building, but I fully believe that was covered over at some point, that window was deleted.
Kind of what it looks like.
Most of the 3-panel facades on Harrison Avenue have glass on all 3 lights, or all 3 panels, and we carry that back into this.
Oh, good. Okay. Thanks.
Historically, the door would never been a single piece of glass that size. It would have been upper section glass, lower section wood panels like every other door on Harrison.
Correct.
Similar, so it's the comment.
Absolutely something that could be addressed. We're just going by what's there currently, which is the standard commercial door. But that door is gonna have to be replaced and that door is gonna have to be made at some point, so that's certainly something that could be addressed. The only problem with that door is the elevation of that door. We wouldn't be able to line anything up with anything else on the building. So yes, we could, originally it would have been 2 pieces of glass, it wouldn't have been a 6 foot tall piece of glass. But if we divided that into 2 lights, it wouldn't line up with anything else on the building.
I'm not proposing 2 lights, just a single light on top.
Maybe on,
With wood below
Yeah.
that? Wait, sorry.
oh, sorry, gotcha, a more traditional door, not commercial.
Yes.
Thank you, okay, gotcha. No, that's a good point, something to consider.
Is that the color you're thinking of? I kind of like that color.
It's definitely better than what's there now.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, this is exciting to look at. It'll be nice to get another restaurant in town, and do you guys know what type of restaurant it'll be yet?
We're open just for our casual space, people can come and join and, it's a nice space for people, the community to gather and,
Cool.
that's what we're looking for.
It will not be a Mexican.
Yeah.
Not a pizza shop, it will not have fresh conservatives.
All right.
That.
Yeah.
And barbecue, yes.
Make our decisions on the type of food you guys.
But there's a lot of opinion.
Well, that-
Well, that's great. It's just nice you guys are taking care of the building too, because it does need some love.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a meet up.
Yeah.
We're really open to any suggestions that keep it as historically relevant.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
All right, any other comments at this point?
No.
If not, we probably ought to move on because we've got more business. Now I turn it back over to Joey.
Thank you very much.
Good enough.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Morgan. I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Did the applicant have all the questions they answered, or needed answered?
Yeah, I think so. That was really helpful.
Okay, thank you.
You guys are good. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
thank you guys for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Morgan.
All right. Thank you guys. Bye.
All right, next on our list, work session for the Angle Block House Edition, 815 Harrison Avenue. Jason?
All right, so we should spend time on trying to move quick to leave lots of time for discussion. But this proposal is an addition and some exterior restoration work to the house across the street, 815 Harrison Avenue, which was historically known as the Engelbach House. More recently owned by Furman, so it's sometimes referred to as the Engelbach Furman House. But it is also an individually listed structure. This structure was actually one of the 9 original structures that was listed on one of the original historic designations. If you know the history of the designations, there was like a 1960s designation, didn't have a lot of information, so the Park Service came back in 1975. That also didn't have a lot of information, but it was one of the 9 structures, one of the only 9 structures that were listed, that was individually referenced on that 1975 report. So it is referred to as, let me get the terminology here, right, the Queen Anne style of our Victorian residential architecture. I have included in my memo just some background on the historical significance of the building, character of the building. I will not go into all of that. In terms of the proposed scope of work, I'm gonna just talk about that, quickly summarize that before we get to the standards. So I will move down to page. I'm gonna look at the elevations that show the addition. All right, so this is the last page of your packet. Second to last page of your packet. So if we look at the concept that's being proposed, of course, this is, it's a work session, so this is just conceptual at this point. The concept is a rear addition, and so you want to follow along with me on the screen. In the rear, you have an existing garage and an existing, connection between the garage and the historic house. The proposed scope of work, would, include demolition of the rear portions of, the building. All these are attached, is my understanding, and the proposed new work would be a garage with a, mansion style roof and a, deck above the garage and, a porch above the deck. And then a master bedroom addition on the upstairs, and I believe, basically converting that space downstairs to a, some entertainment space. So any questions on this, the proposed scope of work or concept before I kind of go into the detailed considerations in the code?
Just one quick question, Chapin.
Yes.
On the photo down there, there's on the new, there, wait, the last one. Yeah. Is this building on the proposed design, there's a new little building there? Is that the historic, like, because there's some sort of like historic outhouse, right? Is that where it's getting moved to?
Yes, yeah, thanks for getting, that kind of gets in this little.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Steph, no, you're fine, because that's where I was going, so I'm glad you're on it. So this, and I'll go back to the plans, but this, is my understanding that this historic outbuilding was originally located from this view approximately here, and it is currently located here. And it has been enclosed within inside this larger footprint addition. And so the applicants are proposing to, recognizing the historical significance of outbuildings, they are proposing to move that structure to this location, which would essentially back up to the public restrooms.
Oh.
So give me 1 second while I go back to the other parts of the report. All right, so there's some key things to think about here. So bear with me while I just try to describe a couple of these things. So one is that the setback. So the Historic Preservation Commission does not regulate the zoning setbacks. This property is in the retail core, and there's a required 20-foot setback from the rear property line. And I have a discussion on that on the screen. I quoted the excerpt from the code that talks about non-conforming uses, lots, and buildings. So in summary, staff has determined that this structure would be, and the new structure would be exempt from the rear property line because it would meet the non-conforming buildings sections of this code. So if you get into the specifics of that, I think I have a sentence right here. It basically says, although the section of code regarding enlargement or change of use, change to a non-conforming use or building prohibits alterations that would not eliminate or reduce the non-conformity, the single-family dwelling is allowed to have its garage demolished and rebuilt to the same setback. Just another interesting note that the RC district also prohibits single-family dwellings, but so the use of the property is also a legal non-conforming use. So that is the determination the staff has issued to the property owner and to the architect. So I just wanted to clarify that as we move on. The other thing that is unknown is to staff at this time is where the original historic portions of the building start and end. So if we Sanborn maps here. Oh, sorry, there you go. That's right here. Included there. If you look at the Sanborn maps and rotate this stuff, it's all. Turn on this plan. So I'll start with 1883. Thanks to the applicant, to the architect, including this in the narrative to save me a little work. If you look at the Sanborn maps, you can see this is the property. Originally, there was a shown like a ditch that traversed the rear portions of the property, and I'm not so sure that's the that was the original structure, or that's the current structure, considering the building's construction, I think it's 1895. So we can see the kind of the history of the project to 1889, and then through 1895. We don't see the current footprint of the building shown there in 1895. But then on the 1937 map, which is the next map that we have, we can see the current footprint of the building. The exception will be that this, if you want to call it an addition, the rear portions of the building, they are larger. The footprint kind of covers this whole area right here. So right here where my hand is, that is the location of the existing outbuilding, historic outbuilding that they're proposing to preserve and move. But so I'm not sure if when this, the Sanborn map is produced in 1937, if the original 1895 construction was to here or to here. And any insight the architect has on this, I welcome the input, but from all the information the staff has available, I don't know at this time if what is shown on the Sanborn map in 1937 is original construction as it relates to this rear portion of the building here. And I would assume, although I don't know for a fact, that these portions are also not original. I would assume that there was that this outbuilding that's here located now was installed somewhere after 1895, and then at a later point in time was enclosed to what you see in 1937, and then after 1937 that was even more enclosed kind of. Does that make sense to everyone? Just trying to describe the progression of the building, because it gets to the point of we're talking about adding an addition on the building, and where that addition is connecting. At this point in time, staff is not certain where it's connecting, if that part is also an addition that was established, that was built after 1895. So if I were to go down to the concept, basically what I'm talking about is I don't know if this portion of the building is original 1895 or it was added later. It was obviously done by 1937. So if you're adding on this addition, I don't know if this wall right here is original or not.
So the addition comes all the way back up at the far end, comes all the way back out to the property line?
Yes.
Do they need, is there a variance needed for that, or?
And that's what I was actually describing previously, because they're building to the same 0-foot setback as the existing building.
Oh.
And so therefore, because it's a staff level determination under the zoning code that's a legal non-conforming building.
Oh, okay.
And they meet the exemptions for rebuilding to that same setback.
And it being currently built there is grandfathered in. I mean, if it's currently there, then it doesn't need a variance because it was grandfathered in.
Same with the little shed
But
thing?
That's correct.
Comes
Yeah,
back
the one
out to
for
the
the-
property line as well?
Yes.
Cause it used to be there, is that the idea? Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay. So,
One second, Steve.
okay, so just in interest of time, I just want to explain some of that background. In your packet, I have included all of the applicable code and standards. There are, let's see here. So first we have our code section, just like we had in the last work session, describing criteria for any type of COA for a listed structure. And that would include additions. And so I have that on the screen. And in your report, I have analyzed each one of those criteria. We have another section of code that just makes reference to these as historic guidelines for Harrison Avenue. I've also included those applicable excerpts of code. There's only a few. There's only 3 with some sub-bullet points for the Harrison Avenue design guidelines, because it's specifically related to additions. And then also the third layer here is the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So we have the standards, and then we have the guidelines, and there are specific guidelines in the SLI standards for new additions, and those are also included in your package. So there are a lot of rules to check here.
Yeah.
And just for this project, staff has gone through and for the most part, given you an indication of whether we think that it complies or it does not comply, or we need to talk about compliance tonight. I think that's all I'm gonna talk about the standards. I'm gonna wrap up with, on the concept, I think some of the key things that, you know, in summary, the staff is identifying we need to talk through is on the addition. You know, there are standards and guidelines that speak to not letting an addition overpower the primary residence. So that someone, when they're standing on the sidewalk and they're viewing the structure from any angle from the right of way, they're able to just make a distinguishment between what was original and what is new. And you know, some of that can be done with material, which, you know, we're not that far down the line. Assuming all materials are done correctly, so that you can make that distinguishment. You know, one of the main questions is, does this addition still allow that primary structure to be interpreted as the original primary structure? There are ways perhaps to make it more distinguished, and the standards and guidelines speak to that. So for example, the standards, you know, talk about a connector element. So making a small, simple connection between the existing structure, historic structure, and the new structure. So that when you're viewing that it's very clear, okay, there's a connection between, and it doesn't have to be just a simple little one-story hallway. But you know, there's a combination of things, whether it's the roof line, whether that connection is the wall is set back from the original wall plane so that it's recessed from that existing western facade of the original building. There's a combination of things that could be done, perhaps, to make this structure more distinguished from the primary structure. So that's really the high level, you know, perhaps a high level discussion for tonight. And then in your packet, you know, you have each standard, as I mentioned, more thoroughly evaluated. In the interest of time, I'm going to pause there and open up for questions for staff. And then after that, I'd suggest we turn it over to the applicant.
My thought about that, because I know that you were suggesting that maybe the addition needed to be more offset from what it connects to. But I guess that would sort of depend on whether what it's connecting to is already an addition. And if it was already an addition, then I'm not sure that offset would make any difference. Because it's already offset if it matched the addition, the old addition.
Maybe that's when the architect Eric is here tonight, representing the property owner, and maybe it's something that Eric could speak to and see if he has any additional information, or thinks of, he knows of ways to get any additional information on evaluating that.
Can I ask that one question? I'm not asking myself. That did something. The little master bedroom addition right here over the.
Yes.
And I'm assuming this is all new because that is coming up. My question is that visible from Harrison? Because I think we're looking at the back here. And one of my concerns about making sure that you can tell the primary structure is the primary structure. This is maybe a personal feeling, but I feel like if that little rounded thing right there was visible from Harrison, it might detract from. Am I making sense?
On their concept, let's see, I'll get that on the screen right here.
Oh.
But they are showing, the architect in this concept rendering is showing that, you know, from approximately from the sidewalk, approximately the property line between that would be visible.
That would be the.
Yeah, so
okay,
it's shown right here on the screen.
I see that now. Okay, sorry, didn't see.
And so, you know, so that goes into this, you know, what Lori just brought up was this kind of conversation about how much of the addition is visible, and how important is that to being able to interpret the original scale of the the original massing of the original building.
Stuart, you have a question?
Well, one of them was saying, I know where it just asked this, and I could probably just go look out the window. and see.
I know, I feel bad that I asked that question too.
The other question is, I think, how visible is all this gonna be from Ninth? Looking down the alley, or from some of the homes there. So that's one of my questions. It also looks like the front porch is being altered a little bit, which is probably a really critical component. Maybe they're taking it back to more of an original look, like you're like glassed in.
Yeah.
And then lastly, there's always been that small building out in front. And I've never known what's that associated with, or which house, it just sits right up on the sidewalk.
It's next door.
Yeah, is that part of this project?
No.
Moved, stored?
So there's like three questions. So the first, I think, no, it's fine. I think, yes, visibility from public rights of way, is, you know, the primary importance of that. I think from the primary street frontage is the primary importance.
Especially with that,
Yeah.
critical alterations.
Right, so I think, so honestly, the primary facade, east facing facade is, you know, from Harrison Avenue is the primary concern. And that's, you know, that's not just directly in front of the home, that's from any point along that, right away where you're looking at, the, you know, the house in three dimensions. They're not primary concern, but yes, from public rights of way, including alleys, and then I think, you know, third priority is just character from other properties, but. So yes, I think all those are important, but Harrison Avenue is definitely priority. The second part of the question was the restoration of the front porch. I did go into that because it's not, to me, it's, you know, that would definitely be evaluated in the CO application, but I don't think I have any concerns for code compliance. The applicant is proposing to restore back to its original conditions. And on the Sanborn maps, and I've noted this in your staff report, the Sanborn maps that is shown as an open air porch, so it has a dashed line indicates that it was in fact a porch and not an enclosed portion of the building. So the applicant is proposing to restore that back by opening that porch back up, so it is in fact a porch. And so that would involve, you know, removing the glass, et cetera. And third, it's my understanding that no, the building that you reference is not part of the scope of this application. And I would honestly just need to, I just need to double check the maps and see which property that lies on, but the architect can certainly speak to that.
Steve, did you have a question for staff before the?
I have a comment,
Please.
Okay, so when we look at page 2, I'll try to make it non-lengthy, but it is something. I guess in one sense, my beef here is this deck that's on the back of the building. Okay,
If you don't mind, I'm gonna ask you to hold your comments until after the applicant has made their presentation, so that we can get better clarity. Sir?
And they will kind of replace that sand or anything like that. I'll just move the lights here. This is also. Yeah, that's okay.
Good to stand. Understanding. Thank you everyone for having us for this pre-application meeting. In the interest of time, I probably won't repeat too much, and I'll be happy to get in or give in-depth answers to any questions that come up. And I'm sure there's plenty of questions. I guess the first thing I want to say is that when we were evaluating the potential design for this project, that Harrison Avenue view was the critical foundation of all of our decisions moving forward. And as you kind of see in the current image, well, I should also say and confirm that we do want to restore that front porch back to its original condition. As part of that, there is that outbuilding built into this kind of rear property addition as well. We're looking forward to the discovery phase and kind of learning more about what the structure is. We kind of understand that it was used as, or someone lived in it for a while. And just looking through the Sanborn maps, we weren't able to necessarily locate the specific structure. But again, once we kind of get in and uncover, maybe we can dimensionally try to find something in the nearby area that it's related to. One thing I did want to bring up and talk with the commission about is the location of where we want to put that outbuilding.
with that new restroom structure being built, kind of as we were thinking through these locations, we weren't, we don't want to necessarily hide it. We want to put it in a location that it could be enjoyed and observed by the public. And so we're starting to think about moving it east as needed to get past that new restroom structure. And then kind of work with the city as like, maybe there's an information plaque on it that faces the visitor center. But the details of that, I don't know right now, but we just want you to know that we want to work with you all to figure out how best to kind of incorporate that into the, maybe the visitor center experience. When it comes to the Harrison view and looking back at the property towards where the addition is, the new bay that's coming out of that master bedroom is distinctly different from the original structure in that it has these chamfered corners that were inspired by some of the original architecture. And just kind of taken to a bigger moment on the addition. And what we like about what this bay is doing is clearly stepping down in priority from that Harrison view. So as you're looking back at the property, the building's just kind of naturally losing its presence down the site. And I guess also tied to that, the bay is the roof form. We wanted to maintain gables just because the hip moment is pretty reserved on that front elevation. And that's kind of what's leading us towards this mansard style of roof on the garage, is just trying again to take these small elements on the original structure and look at creative ways that we could interpret them and make the new addition, complementary, but still very much distinctly of our current time. And I just want to confirm as well that wall in plane with what we think is an addition to the original residence. We are definitely open to stepping back as needed to even further differentiate, even if we want to keep these additions distinctly different from the original, and at least showing how the building has progressed over time. And one thing I do like about the potential of shrinking or stepping back the addition is that it's going to kind of further bring our ridge down a little bit. And for this project, I think a little bit of step will go a long way down the long site. And then I guess in terms of this back roof deck area, this was something where initially the owner was looking to restore that back garage area upon structural review. And prior to structural review, the owner brought the architect to the table because there was water flowing through two spots of the existing structure. One being the first floor addition directly behind the two-story structure. You could actually just see where water was running. That's led to rotting, deterioration of most of the wood sills, and as moisture has been picked up, that has also deteriorated. And a similar condition is found in the existing garage where the site slopes towards the alley and water over time has just infiltrated that garage completely to the point where it's running through that garage area. So we're confident that the water has been hooked up by most of the existing wood structure and has been deteriorating over time. The existing garage roof has visible saddles between primary structural members, where assuming just due to the initial design not being able to withstand the snow loading over time, and then as those trusses are being loaded and starting to deflect, that's causing a compounding structural concern where, that is what we believe is causing this saddling, is just deterioration over time and moisture infiltration. And maybe I'll just kind of leave it there for right now and open up to any questions. I'm gonna grab my water.
I can have a question with that. Do you happen to look at the 1906 Sanborn map upstairs? And I know that sounds weird because that technically it's an 1895 Sanborn map, but it was, revised in 1906, updated. It has a 1906 update and you can kind of feel what's been pasted in there. But I'm wondering if the location of the historic shed was on that 1906, because it wasn't on the 1895, but it was on the 1937. So I'm wondering in my head, maybe it's on the 1906 that's upstairs, which is obviously not a digital, it's not online. That's like one copy we have up there.
Right.
So I just wondered if you ever checked that map to see.
I didn't know, I should, and I could even, just run upstairs, take a picture and throw it on the screen right here.
I'm just curious, I know I personally haven't looked at that book,
Yeah.
but sometimes you will find something that was built in between the 1895 and the 1937, and you'll only find it on that 1906.
That's a great comment.
So that's just.
Yeah, and even when it comes to the, it's okay if I jump in.
Yeah.
With the Sanborn maps, we were really trying to figure out when the primary structure was built. And doing overlays and working with our transparent layers of trying to figure out, you know, how we're gonna match up this footprint, and how other buildings started coming in, crossing over that boundary line. It was fairly challenging to come up with like a definite, this is when the structure appeared on the Sanborn maps, except for that one done in the 1960s.
Yeah. I mean, just don't, I can stay for the discussion, or I can just go get a picture and put it on the screen.
I
think it's good, I want to make this.
Check it maybe.
So, three quick questions for you, and I don't know if they're just not noted on the rendering or if they're intended to be deleted. The chimney on the side of the building, is that intended to be deleted?
That is to remain, it's just not included.
Okay, it looks like there's a window in your rendering that would be where that chimney runs.
So when we come back and present the refined design,
Gotcha.
we'll have all the existing.
So the decorative shingles, those architectural elements would be intended to
All
remain.
be maintained, yes.
And the roof overlap on the front of the building, which is not shown on the rendering, would be
Correct.
to remain?
Yes.
Okay, very good, just a difference in the rendering.
Yes, just
Will the roof line, I know that the porch would be opened up and that the pillars would change. Will the roof line of the porch change?
between the
Of the front
existing
porch.
and the new.
Right.
So we were kind of intending for drainage, reasons to keep those aligned. Being that we'll likely have a gutter installed, because where water is really having an issue is basically right where the mouse is. On the rendering currently on the screen. The existing roofs all funnel into this corner.
And forgive me, I'm talking about the porch on the Harrison face.
Oh, the front porch.
Gotcha.
Which is the front porch. It looks like that roof line changes. Does it become a more steep front entry porch?
Yeah, so the only work we're gonna be doing on the front is removal of non-historic items,
Just exposing the porch.
just exposing the factory.
Gotcha. No, the addition on the back of the building is beautiful. I think that makes perfect sense. And is a good use of the property. Yeah, I was just more concerned with the Harrison Avenue. Thank you.
I had a question or two. It looks like the windows that you're adding on all the new stuff are gonna kind of be match the ones on the original building, double hung windows, no pictured windows.
Yeah, I think the intent was to have a similar aesthetic, but through like proportions, we'll be looking at differentiating them from the original.
Okay, and then it looks like underneath, I guess that's the bedroom, it looks like, are those sliding glass doors and that's a little patio or what is?
That's right, yeah, so that would be kind of this larger transparent opening that we're viewing as this kind of tucked away moment. That's going to allow the owner to have some indoor-outdoor connection.
Would you walk out to a sidewalk?
Correct.
Mark?
How do you plan to deal with the water issue? You just started mentioning it a little bit, but.
Yeah, so, the water issues on the site are significant. And I apologize for not including it in this presentation, but, along the whole north elevation of the primary and addition portions, the adjacent site is, spilling water, directly up against, the existing structure. There's not correct grading, to allow that water to be mitigated and brought to the alley or to Harrison Avenue. So we kind of have this multi-tiered strategy for how we want to mitigate this. And I should also add that the owner is getting liquid water underneath the primary residence in their basement area as well. So to mitigate that, we're planning on going from the inside of the structure and waterproofing from the inside to the exterior through injection method. And then doing some regrading. Now, the tricky part of that, which we still need to address, is coordinating with the adjacent property owner and in other areas of the city. As we move along the north elevation to the west, the building does step back, and I believe it's only a foot and some change currently. And as part of the new addition, we're going to be actually increasing that setback so that we can install a 3-foot concrete pan to allow proper drainage of that north elevation to help them mitigate some of this water intrusion. Then, in that side lawn area, we're going to do a recessed drainage cistern for temporary storing the water, and then another drainage pan, ideally along the south of the property, to again help get the water around the building and in and out.
So that could be done currently, and water problem might be mitigated.
So the waterproofing on existing structure could be done currently.
Regrading as well?
Well, the north drain pan cannot be completed as current because there's not enough dimension to install it. Like I said, we're going to be, I believe, moving that existing north wall that we're proposing to demolish 2 feet further to allow for a 3-foot setback and a 3-foot drain pan to be installed per our civil engineer's recommendation. So it wouldn't be feasible currently. And then our civil engineer also doesn't feel that just purely regrading would be adequate to divert the quantity of water due to not having adequate slope. And so because we don't have adequate slope, that's where the concrete drain pan comes in to have a lower slope to achieve proper drainage.
A second comment would be the glass accordion doors. Don't feel they're very historically appropriate. That's all.
I do have the picture of the Sandmore map, if it's helpful. And this is what's on the map, so you can see, you know, the original structure with the circular tower. And then I actually want to compare because if I'm not mistaken, on the other Sandmore map, there's the porches north of this area, but I just want to check that. And then you can actually see, this is the only place where it's shown, you can see that outbuilding here. Yeah, that was a good call. And then
They allowed you in the state.
Yeah.
Who I was there in 1906.
And this is the symbol for stable on these maps.
Which is a traditional use along that particular alley.
Yeah.
Very good. I had a question too. In your rendering of the wall, are you gonna do anything with the sandstone portions of wall that are existing there now on the new one?
On the Harrison Avenue.
Yeah.
Just where we're removing the existing portion, planning and cleaning and restoring those.
Okay, but on the corner, it shows like, I don't know what this wall is that just to show the wall? Here, is that? Like
Oh,
close to that?
That is just a kind of a graphical representation of that wall, but we would be leaving the existing to remain.
Okay, thanks.
I guess that you're preserving sandstone.
So the lower portion of the front porch, we believe is original. So we are planning on removing the glass and the adjacent infilling walls to open that porch back up.
Okay, was that your question?
That was about the wall around.
The original.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was referencing the stone below the porch area.
The original boundary wall on the outside edge
Fence.
Correct.
would remain.
Oh.
Oh, you're talking about this.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the perimeter side would remain.
Okay,
Yeah, in the rendering, it just shows a fence, but the intention would be to keep the existing sandstone piling fence that's there.
Correct. Thanks.
Scott, any questions or comments, please?
I would say that in general, I agree with staff comments about that perhaps just a slightly greater either step down or a connector differentiating the new addition from the existing addition / house would be preferable to me, given the secretary's standards and so on. I would also, I do like the plan of having that outhouse outbuilding visible. I think that is fantastic. And I do share Mark's concern about the that large glass section underneath the master bedroom. But otherwise, I think that, in general, on the whole, I think that this project looks good. Other than those issues or concerns that I have.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Thank you. Sorry, Steve, right ahead, please.
Okay, so my understanding is that most of that new stuff on the back is gonna be taken down and the new building's gonna be put there, right? Okay, so Leadville used to have a thing where you couldn't do that unless you did it wall by wall, and that's not what I'm proposing. First, let me say, I'm excited that you're taking on this work. This is really a significant building in town. Thank you very kindly for working on this. But I have some reservations on this. So, local history is the first time we had, a rooftop kind of thing was over here with the, Sarah McGee's. They put a rooftop thing on there.
Yeah.
And then somehow the building that Mayor Labbe owned over here, which used to be a county council member's building, a rooftop deck got put up on there. These aren't traditional things. Okay, so we're proposing, from what I see here, that we're saying that the proposed addition is residential in style and therefore consistent with the style of Victorian residential structures. And it complies. The two things I have a problem with is, one, we're saying, well, it's okay if you maintain the same, you can tear all that down and put a new building there. And that tends to go against 17.68.010. Non-conforming uses shall not be expanded. A non-conforming use shall not be changed to another non-conforming use. So we're saying that we're gonna allow you to take this non-conforming use as far as the setbacks go, rip it down, and then put another non-conforming use there. So that seems to violate the code there. It says, alteration will eliminate or the non-conforming or reduce it. We're maintaining the non-conforming. We're saying you can put another non-conformity in there. Now, let's say, I tend to agree that you should be able to do that with the building. Okay, even though it go against what the code says here. I think if you're maintaining the same boundary lines on whatever the encroachment is on the current, things, I think you should be allowed to do that. Although I think the code's strongly against that. But where I have my major problem is with this deck that you're proposing here. That certainly is not a Victorian residential thing. I don't think that deck should be allowed at all. A hot tub would, it just doesn't seem historic at all. It's not Victorian, it's not historic. It's kind of I don't know, a modification that you would do with, to make it a nicer building, but that's not the purpose of what we're doing here. So So those are my objections. That deck thing should not be there at all, no way.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I don't,
offer a couple staff considerations for those.
very quickly before you do that, non-conforming, I think, is incorrect. So the original carriage house at some point was replaced with the existing garage in the same footprint. And so this existing garage, which was replacing an existing carriage house, is now being replaced with another existing garage on the same footprint. So that really negates the non-conforming argument.
Well, okay, so, you know, the zoning code was established around 1970, so the setback requirement of 20 feet was established in around the 1970s. So, in your packet, I've included the exception, and it says that all single-family dwellings are declared to be conforming uses, and buildings, and are exempt from the non-conforming use provisions of this chapter. So long as such dwellings were first constructed, erected, or installed on the lot prior to adoption of the ordinance. So that would have been prior to 1970s. Yeah, so if you were looking at it from the fact that the existing structure was established prior to 1970s, then it is legal non-conforming, and then therefore we meet the exemption to be allowed to be reconstructed to that approximately 0 foot boundary.
Understood. And I'm not arguing with you. I was just trying to clarify. I certainly appreciate your comments about the rooftop deck, and those are duly noted. Any other questions by the commission? Scott, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing more from me.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Did
Did you have-
make one more comment about just distinguishment, if it's helpful?
Please.
Okay, so, you know, these standards, you know, do not, just go into like specifics, and I'm just gonna speak to the deck concern, the rooftop deck concern. So, you know, these standards, nothing that's in your packet is so specific that says thou shalt not, allow rooftop decks, et cetera. It speaks in more general terms. So I think there's an argument on both sides. I think the argument, for is that, you know, we're talking about, distinguishment, so a product of its own time. So the addition should be able to be distinguished from the original structure, and there's a variety of ways to do that. And we talk, and you can use forms, you can use materials, and you can use uses. So that would be the argument for, is that someone can, especially if the connection is, for lack of a better term, better addressed, if there was a more distinct connection, between, there was a connection that made more distinguishment between the historic structure and the addition. Then someone can look at the addition and they can say, okay, it's a product of its own time, because it has a flat roof.
It's obviously added.
And it has a porch. This is obviously new construction, and the materials and things can help with that. The flip side of that, the other argument is that compatibility is the key word. So it has to be compatible, both with this structure and with the surrounding structures and with the historic district. So those are the kind of the arguments of both sides we can consider.
I do appreciate the mansard roof design. It helps to hide, and make less obvious any type of rooftop deck. So someone's buying a house and spending the money to do that, I don't know that they don't deserve to build a rooftop deck if they choose to. I do appreciate that you've gone to so much effort to try to hide it. You had also mentioned a couple of times about possibly exaggerating that step down for the addition.
That's right.
And that seems to be the recurring theme.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again. So did you get everything you needed out of this work session, Phil? Okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, long meeting tonight, guys. Sorry about that. We in our agenda is Leadville History Month discussion.
And honestly, that's to keep a placeholder on your agenda, so I have no issues with not really addressing this now. I did print last year's proclamation that the mayor did declaring April History Month, so I could get it said right, because he called it Leadville History Month. So when he made it, when Mayor Lobby made the proclamation, he called it Leadville History Month. So I just pulled that to see. Again, I will need to talk to the new mayor and see how she wants to do a proclamation and what she wants to do. So, that's really on the agenda to keep a placeholder. Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Quick comment, we talked about that workshop during that month. And I have met at the conference, and I have reached out with an email to Jennifer Rufo
I saw your email, thank you.
to see if she would, if you do that, if she would be willing to.
What is that?
Jennifer Marufo, he met at the Saving Places Conference, and it would be an invitation to her, asking her to come in and do a brief talk during one of our meetings about researching your historic property in Leadville.
Okay,
What,
as a workshop or as a, just to come speak to us?
Either one at this point. But something to be included in, history month in April. So potentially a public talk, but if it was a public talk, it could be rolled into one of our meetings. Did I say that even close to correctly?
So I know we talked about trying to do a workshop during that month, and I just ran into her at the conference,
Right.
and I just reached out to see if she'd be willing to get back to her.
Have you heard anything back from her yet?
She's out until March 1.
Okay, very good. But no, that would be the perfect topic for a talk. It absolutely would. Nancy?
I just wanted to make a comment about the History April being designated as Leadville History Month, I don't know how that month got established. But it's a little bit inconsistent with History Colorado. May is our celebrate, not only with all of my counterparts in Colorado for Colorado Main Street, but also History Colorado, the Colorado Preservation Inc. I mean, we all celebrate May as our like historic, whatever, history month. So I just wanted to put that in the notes.
It would certainly be more appropriate from a weather standpoint in Leadville, to have.
I've wondered that since I started, because all of the people that I deal with on the state and the other levels and the CPI, all of those, and even the National Trust for Historic Places, it's all celebrated in May. So I've often wondered that, so thank you for bringing that up. It might be something we need to think about. I'm not sure how it got to be April to begin with.
Is there anything that we're doing this year that would preclude us from changing History Month from April to May? Do we have any events currently scheduled? Have we done anything that would keep us from being able to make that change?
No,
It would give us an extra 30 days to get ready.
It would give us more time to prepare.
And not only that, there could be potential for a partnership with the Colorado Main Street program, because we do something, I don't know, it's been kind of sort of done this last couple of years, kind of as a pilot program. And it's called Celebrating Main Streets. And it's a survey that goes around, it's like, what's your favorite, Main Street, attraction, if you will, or space or spot. So I can make sure that my counterparts that take my place, that replace me, for Main Street will have that information.
Any comments from the commission about changing our designated Leadville History Month from April to May for the year of 2024? Is there a reason not to do that?
Would anyone mind if I talk to Greg Lobby to find out why it originally was put in April before we make that decision?
I'd be agreeable to that.
Let's put that on the agenda for next week, and do please reach out, 2 weeks in, do reach out to Mayor Lobby. Ex-Mayor Lobby.
For me.
Right. I do have one other thing to add, that should have been on the agenda that I didn't realize, and that is just to keep the, article for the Main Street program on the agenda. Scott, I know you had asked, when those were due. I think that right now they're down to only once a month. So Nancy, do you have any kind of a date guideline to help us make sure that we could get something to you by? I haven't paid enough attention to know when it comes out, I'm sorry.
It usually comes out twice a month. That's how it's been consistently for the last few years. I have a meeting with, the board regarding the future of that newsletter. So I will get back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll wait on that, Scott, so you don't have to tax your brain.
Okay. Last on the agenda this evening is suggested goals for 2024. Does anyone on the commission or anyone present have any comments on those suggested goals before we wrap up for the evening? once again, they are always on the agenda and they are to keep those forefront in our minds. Any comments?
Survey,
Sir?
is this on the survey? Comments on the survey?
No, we don't have comment.
Do you have comments on the survey? What, I mean,
Did you have a comment you want to make on the historic survey we're doing?
Yeah, I saw something that, in the last, city council meeting, that they adopted a encroachment fee. And that personally may or may not affect me because, I've occupied the right of way more than 18 years, so average possession. But that aside, I have an issue with both my neighbors encroaching, and they haven't occupied their parts for 18 years. And it's like the city just said that's okay.
That would be an issue to bring up for city planning and zoning or directly with the director Chapin. That's completely and totally out of the Historic Preservation Commission's.
Well, but you're gonna do a survey to see what a property survey to see what boundary lines are and fences to find boundary lines.
The surveys that we're doing are actually not surveys for the physical property, they're surveys for the historical context of the property. So we're researching the history of the property, but we're not researching, we don't have anyone doing surveys or doing boundary markings or anything like that.
yeah, they're not land surveys.
But at the same time, that is something that Chapin can address with you directly. That is, it's outside of the purview of these particular surveys. Anything else, anyone tonight? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
In a second. All right, HPC is adjourned at 6:55 PM. Thank you, everyone, for a long meeting time.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time, guys.
The restaurant, these guys are super talented. They could be really neat and that.
Yeah.
Nice thing.
It really was. Oh, it's cool to
Yeah,
see.
very quality people.
Good to see you.
Bye, Scott, thank you.
Good night, Scott.
And as much snow as we got, this was a really smart idea, to not stop snowing yet.
Yeah, I think I saw that the highway was closed up to Copper.
Yes.
91 was closed for some of the day today, yes.
Yeah, I'm very glad I didn't get stuck somewhere.
If you let me go to the restaurant.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
No need to get survey.